Chapter 1497. Although Gu Li's neck was covered with a metal rod, the neck was still the weakest point of defense. Given the great sage's strength, killing Gu Li would only take a few breaths of time. The surrounding devils were all stunned. They stared at the great sage who had appeared in the middle of them, their eyes wide open as they held their weapons. "Let go of the Holy Master! Hurry up and let go of the Holy Master!" The demons glared and shouted angrily. The great sage, who was holding the Jingu Bang, lifted it up and looked at the demons with a golden gleam in his eyes. "All of you, shut up. If today becomes the anniversary of the Holy Master's death." The great sage's eyes flashed with vicious light. He instantly suppressed the demon expert. "Back off!" Gu Li roared angrily at the surrounding demons. When they heard his order, they retreated over 100 meters despite their unwillingness to do so. This sudden turn of events was shocking to everyone. They couldn't understand why the great sage had appeared in their midst, much less in the form of the envoy of the left. Never mind where the envoy of the left really was. Could the great sage have learned the unshackled doppelganger? In all of the upper three realms, only the Sea Emperor of the Sea of Innocence had managed to learn the unshackled doppelganger. Was the one standing next to Yi Zichen really the unshackled doppelganger? You could say yes, but you could also say no. In truth, this great sage was transformed from monkey hair. He'd already secretly disposed of the envoy of the left by Gu Li's side. "You've never disappointed me," said Gu Li. As the staff pressed against his neck, Gu Li couldn't help but nod in admiration. Just as he raised his hand, the great sage's staff pressed down hard on his shoulder. "Do you want to die?" When he heard that, Gu Li lowered his hand resentfully. "We've been rivals for so many years. I should at least keep an eye on you, right? Neither of us wants to suffer at the other's hands, right? It's only natural for me to be cautious." Yi Zichen stood in the air, arms crossed, and laughed. "Retract your inescapable net. We came back to take the Z family with us. We don't want to take your life." "You don't want to, or you don't dare," laughed Gu Li. "If you kill me here, my subordinates might not let you go. You can say that. Anyway, if you want to live, then stop your divine ability." Yi Zichen pointed at the divine artifact, the inescapable net, which enveloped Greenwave City. No matter how he answered, Gu Li's words struck a chord in his heart. Right now, Gu Li really couldn't be killed. If he and the great sage wanted to leave, they'd have to use Gu Li as a hostage. If he killed Gu Li, they'd lose their final bargaining chip. Given how much the demons revered Gu Li, they'd probably go crazy. If he could, how could Yi Zichen allow him to live another second? This time, he had come deep into the tiger's den to rescue Zixia Fairy and her family. The most important thing right now was to hurry up and leave. There would be many more opportunities to fight Gu Li in the future. Yi Zichen firmly believed that evil would never prevail over good. It was only a matter of time. They were said to be the two emperors chosen by the heavens. The four great auxiliary stars stood by his side, the Brahma stars took him as their leader, and even the Transcendent's outer realms viewed him favorably. Based on everything that had happened, Gu Li would never amount to much. Perhaps he could fight against him now, but evil would never prevail over good in ancient times. The God Emperor could suppress the Demon Emperor. Even now, Yi Zichen could suppress Gu Li. Yi Zichen pointed at the inescapable net overhead. Gu Li's life was in the great sage's hands. Although the great sage was certain that Yi Zichen wouldn't dare kill him, given his temperament, he should be able to see the situation clearly. If they dragged things out, Yi Zichen would be on the winning side. "You made a clever move," laughed Gu Li. "A clever move? Are you sure this isn't a killing move?" asked Yi Zichen. "Could it be that you've got a trump card up your sleeve? What do you think?" Yi Zichen could see Gu Li's fearless smile. Yi Zichen swore that the last thing he wanted to see was that smile. He knew that this was the last move he'd made before coming here. His trump card. The only one he had was the teleportation talisman the Hermit Emperor had left him. He wanted to see Gu Li's expression of unwillingness. That was the only way to prove that there was nothing he could do. But now, he was smiling. Yi Zichen bit his finger, then subconsciously reached out with his divine sense. His eyes, however, were indifferent. Is there any point in fighting psychological warfare now? I don't know if there's any point, but I know you're afraid, aren't you? Said Gu Li. How can you tell? If you're not afraid, why did you bite your finger and reach out with your divine sense? Isn't that just a sign of fear? It's always better to be cautious. It's better to be safe than sorry. That's the modern realm's saying, said Yi Zichen. That's right, it's the old saying. The old saying doesn't lie to me. That's why I've lived so cautiously all these years, said Gu Li. But now you're in trouble, said Yi Zichen. Who said that? Didn't I tell you already? This isn't a killing move. As soon as he finished speaking, the great sage transformed Gu Li into a puppet, just like the substitute puppet from before. The substitute puppet ranks among the top 20 auxiliary divine artifacts for two reasons. It's a substitute, but also because it's a set, not just one. Gu Li's laughter rang out from a nearby alleyway. He craned his neck and walked up to the demons. When they realized that the one he'd just held was a puppet, and that their holy master was still safe, they immediately surrounded the great sage. The great sage hadn't expected this at all. He knit his brows, hefted his staff, and looked around vigilantly. This brother of yours is something that I'm very afraid of. In order to lure his true body out, I've really racked my brains. Gu Li clasped his hands behind his back and looked up at Yi Zichen, his eyes brimming with amusement. Brother Yi, do you have any more tricks up your sleeve? Why don't you show them to me? Ha! Yi Zichen laughed coldly. It seems you don't have any more. Gu Li pursed his lips. Is this your final move? How disappointing. Even now, I'm at a loss as to whether or not I should show you my final move. It seems you've already lost. Is that so? It seems you still have more tricks up your sleeve? Laughed Gu Li. No, this is indeed my final move. You've won. But I'd like to see just what your final move is, said Yi Zichen. Really? I'm afraid that if I use it, you'll feel despair. Chapter 1498. Great sage? The cold blade touched his neck. Yi Zichen's eyes flashed with astonishment. He tilted his head and looked behind him. The person standing half a step away from him was still the great sage, but his eyes flashed with a vicious light. You still can't tell? Gu Li smiled and shook his head silently. Surrounded by demons, the great sage's eyes flashed. He looked up at his clone, who was holding the sharpest blade to Yi Zichen's neck. That wasn't a clone he'd created with monkey fur. To make things easier for him, the great sage had created the clone with monkey fur to create its own consciousness. That way, even if he didn't need to control it, it could complete its tasks on its own. The great sage could also pretend to be Gu Li's envoy of the left. The great sage had never considered that something would go wrong with the clone. He'd never gotten in touch with it. It wasn't until the clone had pointed his sword at Yi Zichen that he considered the possibility that Gu Li had taken control of the clone's consciousness and was trying to regain control. Only then did he realize that the person standing there was no longer the clone he'd left behind. The clone he'd created was currently in the north of Bayubo City. Yi Zichen could sense that it was on the verge of death. This wasn't the great sage. Yi Zichen understood. He'd called it the great sage just now because everything had happened so suddenly that he hadn't expected it. If the person standing next to him wasn't the great sage, then who was it? Although this was just a clone of the great sage's monkey fur, it still possessed 30% of the great sage's strength. Ordinary rulers were no match for it. Only Gu Li's two envoys could. Envoys? Yi Zichen's heart suddenly went cold. When the great sage said he'd successfully disguised himself as the envoy of the left, he'd found it strange. Although the great sage was strong, the envoy of the left was no ordinary person. According to the great sage's description, he'd dealt with him easily. It's you. Yi Zichen looked to the side. The sword-wielding great sage had assumed the appearance of the envoy of the left. After his identity was revealed, the envoy of the left didn't say anything. Or perhaps it was better to say that he was a man of few words. At the same time, Yi Zichen felt someone grab his shoulder. The ice-cold blade pressed hard against his neck, and fresh blood flowed out from his neck. Under the envoy of the left's control, Yi Zichen landed on the ground. He ignored Yi Zichen and placed his left hand on his chest. His right hand still held his sword against Yi Zichen's neck, then he bowed slightly towards Gu Li. Emissary Zhua. The experts surrounding the great sage were all smiles. Thank you for your hard work. Gu Li nodded towards Envoy Zhua, then walked in front of Yi Zichen. Looks like I've won this round. Hand over the key fragment, and I'll let Great Sage Sun and the members of the Z family go. You're not going to let me go? Yi Zichen smiled. Forgive me for saying this, but you can't leave. Yi Zichen took a deep look at Gu Li. From his gaze, he could sense the hatred and madness hidden deep within. There was a fire burning in his eyes. It was the fire of his heart, the fire of his anger, and a hint of jealousy. Yi Zichen could understand the first two, but never mind Gu Li looking at him. Even Yi Zichen felt a fire burning within him. It was the flames of jealousy in his eyes that he found hard to understand. What on earth was he jealous of? Was he jealous of his luck? Was he jealous of the 4 auxiliary stars by his side? Was he jealous of the help he had from so many benefactors? It didn't seem like it. Although Gu Li had always stood on the opposite side of Yi Zichen, in all fairness, Yi Zichen held him in high regard. Whether it was in terms of shrewdness or intellect, no ordinary person could compare to him. Gu Li wasn't the type to get jealous over external factors. So what on earth was he jealous of? Given the current situation, there was no time to ponder the matter of the lock. His life was in the enemy's hands. The most important thing right now was how to escape. Yi Zichen glanced at the great sage. His situation wasn't much better than Yi Zichen's. One of the 2 emissaries, the envoy of the right, was glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey. There were also a dozen or so demon rulers surrounding him. Although those rulers were nothing more than shrimp soldiers to the great sage, 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Furthermore, he had an existence worthy of his full attention. The Hermit Emperor had given him a talisman, but he couldn't retrieve it from his phone. It seemed he had no choice but to fight to the death. Yi Zichen's gaze shifted back and forth. By now, all of Gu Li's subordinates were gathered in Bayubo City. Are you still thinking about how to escape? Laughed Gu Li. I can't just sit around and wait for death, can I? Do you really think I'll be able to survive after falling into your hands? Yi Zichen didn't even try to hide it. Of course not, said Gu Li. Seriously, can't you just tell a lie? Who knows, I might actually believe your lies, give up resisting, obediently hand over the fragments of the God Emperor's tomb, and wait for you to spare my life, said Yi Zichen speechlessly. Gu Li couldn't help but laugh. Yi Zichen understood him, but how could he not understand Yi Zichen? There was no point in saying all this. I want to see what shocking moves you'll make in your final struggle. Then I'll definitely open your eyes. Yi Zichen's gaze darkened as he roared at the great sage. Great sage, return. The great sage was already prepared. His golden eyes flashed, and a strand of golden monkey fur returned to his neck. Instantly, the great sage wielding the Rui Jingu Bang grew 1,000 times larger. Dharma idol of heaven and earth. The 1,000-meter-tall great sage towered into the clouds, casting a huge shadow over the entire Blue Wave City. Suddenly, the great sage swung his iron staff viciously at Yi Zichen. Even the envoy of the left didn't dare take the great sage's all-out attack head-on. He instantly appeared before Gu Li, grabbed him by the shoulder, and retreated 100 meters away. Rumble. The earth caved in. His staff smashed a 100-meter-deep hole into Bayubo City. At that moment, Yi Zichen nimbly stepped into the air, his eyes flashing with fire. Fire, come! Heavenly fire fell to the ground. Surging white heavenly fire rained down from the sky, turning everything within 100 kilometers into a sea of flames. Collect! As the heavenly fire descended, Yi Zichen summoned the Yao Ceiling Pagoda and sucked all of the civilians into it. Great Sage! Understood. There was no need for Yi Zichen to say anything. The great sage opened his mouth, sucking in the surrounding air and the heavenly fire. Chapter 1499. Retreat. When they saw the demon experts of Bayubo City surrounded by heavenly fire, they didn't dare tarry. They sped to the edge of the city. Yi Zichen's Tao of Fire of the 5 elements hadn't reached full mastery. Although ruler-level experts didn't dare rashly touch the descending heavenly fire, if they defended carefully, it would be difficult to truly harm them. The sea of fire below could only hold them for a short time. In this short period of time, they needed to tear a hole in the inescapable net. Great Sage, it's up to you. The inescapable net was ranked 9th on the list of auxiliary divine artifacts. Yi Zichen knew that, given his current diviner cultivation, breaking through it from the inside was a pipe dream. This divine artifact had trapped even Eastern Monarch Tai for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. The great sage nodded solemnly. Although he was still some distance away from Eastern Monarch Tai, with the support of his Dharma world, breaking through the net wasn't impossible. Rui, Rui! As the great sage muttered, the Rui Jingu Bang transformed into a long, sharp needle. That was inevitable. If you wanted to break through the net, breaking it with a single point was the most effective method. Break! The great sage stabbed the needle viciously into the net. As the great sage broke through, Yi Zichen didn't just stand there. Fire, come! Wind, come! The scorching heavenly fire fell from the void without any gap. The howling wind also turned into a tornado, pushing the heavenly fire higher and higher. The Tao of the 5 elements. Gu Li narrowed his eyes. He had to admit, the Tao of the 5 elements was causing him no small amount of trouble. It wasn't just him, his demon subordinates were the same. He glanced at his subordinates trapped by the heavenly fire. The only ones capable of completely ignoring it were his 2 emissaries. Don't worry about me. Go and capture Yi Zichen. As soon as he said that, Gu Li's brows darkened. He looked up into the sky. With the support of his Dharma world, the great sage's Rui Jingu Bang had already pierced through the net. So long as he could break through it, everything else would be easy. In the blink of an eye, the great sage tore a hole in the net surrounding Bayubo City. However, the inescapable net had a self-healing effect, so the wound would not last long before it completely healed. Easy go! Yi Zichen summoned more celestial fire from the sky, fanned the flames, and hurriedly followed the great sage out of the rift. He really got away. Seeing this, Gu Li couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. The people outside have finished their preparations, right? Protector 3 and Protector 5 will stay 100 miles away from the city, the special envoy of the right said. Hurry up and extinguish the fire. We can't stay here for too long. Although Yi Zichen and that monkey don't have the advantage in numbers, if they really go all out, the people outside might not be able to stop them, said Gu Li. Swoosh! Above the clouds, 2 piercing sounds cut through the sky, and the clouds in the void were blown away by the strong wind brought by these 2 figures. Naturally, they were Yi Zichen and the great sage. After leaving the city, they didn't dare tarry at all. They hurried to the rendezvous point Xiao Yumei had arranged. What did they say? The great sage, who was enveloping Yi Zichen in divine power, furrowed his brows and stared intently at Yi Zichen's phone. The signal's a bit shaky, so I can't send a message. When I get back, I'll have the technical department improve the signal. Although he couldn't send a message, Yi Zichen took out the talisman the Hermit Emperor had given him. No one could be sure that nothing unexpected would happen along the way. Taking out the talisman was a precaution. Son, swear that this is the most useless run I've ever had. Just wait until I've settled the Xixia clansmen in, then I'll get my revenge sooner or later. The great sage's eyes flashed with golden light as he gnashed his teeth and roared. Although there were many demons, the great sage wasn't afraid. If not for the Xixia clansmen, he would have long since told Yi Zichen to hide in the Yaoxiling pagoda and wait for him while he smashed the demons' heads to bits. Enough. It's already good enough that you managed to escape the city. In that situation, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that his life had been hanging by a thread. Yi Zichen held off the left emissary, and the great sage was surrounded. Fortunately, Yi Zichen had the God Emperor's tomb's key fragment. Before obtaining it, Guli didn't dare take his life. That was why the two of them had time to privately communicate through divine sense, catching Guli and the others off guard. Otherwise, Yi Zichen wasn't sure if the great sage would have died, but he was probably in deep trouble. Given our current speed, if we don't. Suddenly, the great sage came to a stop. Yi Zichen extended his divine sense and sensed the auras of dozens of God race experts. Something's wrong. This was the Northern Empire. The Northern Empire was full of God race experts, which was also good. But now, so many of them had suddenly appeared, and it felt as if they'd been deliberately waiting for them to show up. Something was wrong. Yi Zichen sensed that something was wrong, but they couldn't stop now. Guli and the others from Cerulean Wave City would catch up at any moment. They had no time to ponder the God race experts' intentions. Ignore them. If they don't attack us, let's not touch them. The great sage nodded, enveloped Yi Zichen in divine power once more, and rushed forward. However, this time, he wasn't as impetuous as before. Instead, he moved at a relatively slow pace. Before they'd taken more than a few steps, those celestial race experts actually stopped them. Among these people, there were 2 experts with at least the aura of an Imperial Realm expert. What do you mean? When he saw the experts blocking their way, the great sage roared, "We're in a hurry. Take advantage of the fact that I haven't lost my temper yet and scram." There was no mistaking the aura of an Imperial Emperor. If they'd sensed the great sage's Imperial Emperor aura, they'd definitely have retreated. However, they didn't waver in the slightest. Yi Zichen and the great sage couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. "Brothers, I don't know if you're here for money or—" "Please speak clearly. We're tourists from the God race, and we're in a hurry to return to Heavenly God City. Could you please make things easier for us?" Yi Zichen cupped his hands respectfully. As he spoke, he gripped the talisman the Hermit Emperor had given him. He could vaguely sense that these people weren't gods. "There's no way they'll let you go." Suddenly, a chuckle rang out in the sky. Yi Zichen and the great sage turned around and saw Guli rushing towards them, a sinister smile on his face. Chapter 1500. The Sea of Innocence. After the God Emperor pulled the other great emperors in charge of the Divine Mountains into their camps, they no longer tried to hide anything. They made the Northern Divine Mountains Sea of Innocence their headquarters. As for the reason, it was so simple it left everyone speechless. Because of Xuemo's injury, everyone had gathered here. "I'm used to it. You should all know that the Devil race and the Monster race are deploying a large number of people to the border. It seems like they can't wait any longer." After reading Hu Baxi's message, Xianji spoke to the other emperors in the Plum Garden. Even though they were enemies with the God Emperor of Heavenly God City in private, judging from his recent behavior, this God Emperor didn't seem to want to fall out with them openly. Since that was the case, Xianji naturally wouldn't disrespect him. A few days ago, he sent some people from the Profound Pavilion back to Heavenly God City, and they went about their duties as usual. Thanks to the Hermit Emperor's miraculous treatment, the injured divine generals had mostly recovered. Only the God of Wine, who, despite having regained consciousness, was still unable to move like a normal person. He spent most of the day bedridden. The intentions of these two races are getting more and more obvious. Previously they knew to cover it up a little, but this time they're not even trying to hide it. They're suppressing the borders with such great fanfare. Zhao Qianling said indifferently. She was also holding a cell phone in her hand. Not only him, but the other great emperors in the Plum Garden also had one each. They were the first users of the cell phone after Zhou Mo arrived at the God Race. It was mostly thanks to Yi Zichen that they'd been able to promote their cell phones to such a high level. Right now, all of them belonged to Yi Zichen's faction. Zhou Mo's relationship with Yi Zichen had to be kept a secret, but the great emperors didn't need to. Moreover, he couldn't hide it even if he wanted to. Everyone here knew that Zhou Mo was Yi Zichen's fated star. "How's the situation at the river Styx?" Yirong asked. "Naturally, the situation is 100 times more serious than at the border of the God clan," Shuiyang said. "My main body just sent word that Emperor Hades seems to have entered a period of decline and is currently in seclusion. Whatever is suitable in the river Styx is handled by his disciple, Su Yun." "Is it one of the 4 auxiliary stars?" Bian asked. "That's him." Shuiyang nodded. "Whoa, this game is quite interesting." While everyone was solemnly discussing important matters, the Hermit Emperor sat to the side, playing a small game on his phone. "Senior Hermit Emperor, could it be that you're not interested in the movements of the Yaoan demons?" Zhao Qianling asked. "What does this have to do with me?" The Hermit Emperor did not even raise his head as he said, "Even if they really do manage to invade, that is something for you and the God Emperor to worry about. My West Divine Mountains Hermit Palace is just a bunch of doctors. At most, after the big battle, the task of treatment will be more important. Don't tell me you're still counting on the old man? Am I supposed to bring them to the battlefield?" "That's not what I meant. I mean, forget it, let's not talk about it." In truth, what Zhao Qianling wanted to express was very simple. She felt that the Hermit Emperor was the God race's most respected existence. He was also the oldest divine emperor, and he controlled a divine mountain. No matter what, he had to be a little concerned about the movements of the devil race and the demon race. However, the Hermit Emperor's words left Zhao Qianling speechless. All she could do was swallow her words and not bring them up again. "You're overthinking things. I used to be like that too, but after all these years I've finally figured it out. What's the point of overthinking things? What's to come will come. You can't even stop it, and you'll only add to your worries. Besides, it's been a long time since I've cared about the affairs of the world. Whether they fight or not has nothing to do with me. Besides, if you're talking about worrying, Zhou Wu is even more worried than you are." He giggled as he played his little game. At that moment, the Hermit Emperor's hand inexplicably stiffened. Before long, he sighed helplessly, then stowed his phone away in his spatial divine artifact. "I really can't afford to waste any time. See? You said I didn't care about the Yaoan demon's affairs, but now I'm getting involved, aren't I?" Something happened on the Emperor's star. The great emperors were stunned. They all knew about the talismans the Hermit Emperor had given Yi Zichen. At the time, they'd each prepared a talisman for him, but the Hermit Emperor refused. "Didn't you say nothing would happen to you in the north?" Yirong furrowed her brows. Although Yirong was grateful the Hermit Emperor had enlightened her, she'd always held a grudge against him. The Hermit Emperor always gave off an unfathomable aura, even in front of people like them. The Hermit Emperor had assured them nothing would happen to the talismans, and Yirong wanted to ease the tension between them, so she'd agreed. Now the Hermit Emperor said he wanted to head to the north. Shouldn't Lady Providence, the one who uncovers all the mysteries of the world, know best whether or not something unexpected will happen? The Hermit Emperor chuckled. "You really don't need to worry, Lord of the Big Dipper. Even if the Emperor's star destroys the talismans, nothing unexpected will happen to him. If I go, I'll at most clear up some of his doubts. Naturally, I'll help him resolve this crisis." "What do you mean?" asked Yirong. "Think about what the Emperor's star has in his hands," laughed the Hermit Emperor. The great emperors furrowed their brows, but before long someone reacted. Their eyes brimmed with astonishment. Are you saying that person will intervene? If that person really did intervene, Yi Zichen really wouldn't be in any trouble in the north. After all, that was their territory. Isn't it inevitable that he'll intervene? The Emperor's star will break through to ruler soon. It's not strange for him to establish a friendly relationship with the Emperor's star ahead of time. The Hermit Emperor chuckled, then glanced at Yi Rong. You're still too young and you're too impulsive. If this continues, how will you support the Emperor's star? When you're free, spend some time with the Lord of the Big Dipper. Don't tell me you can't get in touch with him. The Hermit Emperor stretched lazily, then beckoned Shui Yang and Bian over. The two great emperors walked off into the distance with the Hermit Emperor. They discussed something, but Shui Yang and Bian's expressions were solemn. After that, the Hermit Emperor shattered the void and left. The others gathered around. What did the Hermit Emperor say? Shui Yang and Bian glanced at each other. Their expressions were solemn. At Zhao Qianling's urging, Shui Yang narrowed his eyes and spoke. The Hermit Emperor just told us that we can start preparing to fight the enemy. Instantly, the great emperor's hearts trembled. Chapter 1501. The cold wind was bone-chilling. It was as if the borders of the northern kingdom, where birds sang and flowers bloomed, were covered in frost. Yi Zichen couldn't help but sigh. He'd underestimated Gu Li's desire for the key fragment. There were more than 100 people. All of them were experts above the celestial being realm. This number of people was already more than the number of experts in any of the 3 cities of the god, Yao, and demon races. The number of demon experts he'd brought with him was already astonishing. Yi Zichen had once wondered how he'd managed to bring so many people to the Yao northern kingdom. Now, there were so many people lying in ambush. Could it be that he had fought his way through city by city? This didn't make sense either. If they really attacked, the king of the northern kingdom would not sit idly by. The only possibility was that it had appeared in their auras. Based on their auras, Gu Li's men were all god race experts. Even great sages with the eyes of fire and gold were unable to see through their true forms. How could the people from the north see through them? It seemed that they had used this method of concealing their aura. In addition, the atmosphere of the northern kingdom was especially warm to the experts of the god race, so they had used this opportunity to come to the northern kingdom. What a generous gesture! The trapped Yi Zichen couldn't help but mutter to himself. Forget about Gu Li's 2 special envoys, just the other demon experts were enough to give him and the great sage a headache. For a moment, he regretted shattering the Hermit Emperor's talisman, even if it meant summoning him over. He felt that it would be very difficult to turn the situation around. Are you surprised? Are you excited? When he saw Yi Zichen's somewhat ashen expression, Gu Li stuck his hands into his pockets mockingly, then arched his eyebrows and smiled mockingly. It felt so good. These were Gu Li's truest thoughts. Once again, he gained the upper hand in his clash with Yi Zichen. That's the look in his eyes. What he wanted to see was Yi Zichen's current appearance. Surprise. Anger. There was also a tinge of bitterness. Regardless of whether Yi Zichen felt that way or not, that was what Gu Li read from his expression. Run. Now you run again. Why did he suddenly stop? Couldn't he be that good at running? The people in front are your Protoss compatriot. Hurry up and negotiate with them so that they can let you go. Or you can tell them that you are the master of the Emperor's Star of Ziwei, one of the candidates for transcendence in the future. See if they are willing. Be your lackey? Gu Li laughed sinisterly. A sinister smile hung on his face as he stared directly into Yi Zichen's eyes. Looking at him now, it felt like his temperament was a little twisted. You've got some tricks up your sleeve, said Yi Zichen coolly. You've really planned ahead. You actually set up an ambush outside the city. Yi. The great sage's divine sense transmission rang out in Yi Zichen's sea of consciousness. Don't worry, said Yi Zichen. I've already crushed the talisman the Hermit Emperor left me. It shouldn't be long before the Hermit Emperor hurries over, and perhaps even the other great emperors. That's easy. The great saint of the demon race clenched the Jingu Bang in his right hand and grinned. Enter the Yao Ceiling Pagoda and wait for the other great emperors. Then you, Lai Shun, will naturally play with them. The great sage's expression was ferocious. I've been repressed ever since I was born in the north, and I've been looking for a place to vent. Can I trust you? Said Yi Zichen solemnly. Just wait and see. These bastards can't hurt me. My title as the victorious fighting Buddha isn't for nothing, said the great sage. That seemed like the best course of action. Naturally, he wanted to fight alongside the great sage, but both he and the great sage knew that, given his current cultivation, even with his mastery of the 5 elements, it would be difficult for him to protect himself. There were simply too many people here. Entering the Yao Ceiling Pagoda and waiting for reinforcements was the best choice. If the great sage was willing to fight outside, then so be it. If something really did happen to him, Yi Zichen could take him inside the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. All right, then be careful. Yi Zichen nodded. With that, Yi Zichen's divine sense connected to the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. The great sage hefted the Jingu Bang, his aura billowing to the heavens as he prepared to attack the demons. Hey! The connection was severed. Yi Zichen's connection to the Yao Ceiling Pagoda had been completely severed. His divine sense was sealed, and a black-robed man appeared before him. The envoy of the left. Gu Li's envoy of the left stood in front of him. His hand was pressed against Yi Zichen's forehead, sealing his divine sense from the very source. The great sage quickly noticed this and swung his Jingu Bang viciously at the envoy of the left. However, someone caught him midway. The right envoy. This time, it was Gu Li's right envoy. He wore a pair of black leather gloves that glowed with a faint light. His hand clenched tightly around the great sage's iron staff. He couldn't move it in the slightest. At the same time, the great sage's 5 vitals were pressed against his weapon. His movements were completely sealed. You can't enter the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. If you do, things will get troublesome. Gu Li rubbed his hands, then slowly looked up and glanced coldly at Yi Zichen. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda is the #1 divine artifact among all auxiliary divine artifacts. Although it's no longer on the rankings, it's still unoccupied. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda was forged from meteorites Emperor Hades found in the outside. Coupled with a host of other expensive materials, even an Emperor-level expert would find it difficult to shake the pagoda. You call it an auxiliary divine artifact, but in truth, it's also a defensive divine artifact. If I let you in and you're determined to hide inside like a turtle, I really can't do anything to you. Gu Li circled Yi Zichen with his hands behind his back. However, even now, Yi Zichen's lips still curved in a barely discernible smile. Gu Li didn't know where that smile came from, but he was furious. He punched Yi Zichen in the stomach. His stomach spasmed and he coughed up acid. At the same time, Gu Li grabbed Yi Zichen's chin. Why don't you give me another smile? Why should I listen to you? If you want me to smile, I'll smile. Do you think I don't care about face? Said Yi Zichen. Hand over the God Emperor's tomb's key fragment, said Gu Li. If I don't, do you dare kill me? Said Yi Zichen. Gu Li tightened his grip. Yi Zichen could hear the bones in his jaw creak. After glaring at him a few more times, Gu Li swung Yi Zichen's head away. I really don't know where you get your confidence from. How dare you talk to me like that? Gu Li wiped his hands on Yi Zichen's clothes, then narrowed his eyes. In the past, there'd always be people who'd try to save you. This time, everyone here is mine. Why don't you try and find someone else to save you? Chapter 1502. Gu Li's words were filled with mockery and provocation. When he heard the transmission, he came to an abrupt halt. He glanced at the envoys and saw that they were frowning deeply. Despite their cultivation, they couldn't immediately pinpoint the speaker's location. Holy Master, it's an expert, the envoy of the right whispered into Gu Li's ear. Where is he? It didn't matter if he was an expert or not. He had to pinpoint his location. In response to Gu Li's question, the envoys shook their heads. The instant the transmission appeared, they'd searched for the speaker's location. Even now, they still hadn't found any trace of him. At that moment, Gu Li's heart trembled. Then, he looked at Yi Zichen with even more venomous hatred. You're really something. Gu Li couldn't remember how many times this had happened. Whenever Yi Zichen was on the brink of death, a few ignorant fools would always show up. What infuriated him even more was how powerless he felt in the face of these people who'd come to save Yi Zichen. This time, he really didn't disappoint. Another one had come. However, he was different from before. In the past, he'd always relied on himself. Now, he had the Demon Emperor's support, and the envoys of the left and right were both demon god experts. They already stood at the very peak of the three realms. Gu Li refused to believe he'd fail again. Since someone's here, I'll let you live a little longer. Gu Li smiled sinisterly, then turned back to face the sky and laughed heartily 3 times. You want me to let him go for your sake? You should at least let me see your face, right? Don't hide up there. If you want to plead on his behalf, then come down and meet me. The envoy of the left clung to Yi Zichen's shoulders, then reinforced and sealed his spiritual sea several times. The great sage couldn't help but glance at Yi Zichen. Sensing his gaze, Yi Zichen glanced back, then shook his head. Yi Zichen understood the great sage's meaning. He wanted to ask if the newcomer was the Hermit Emperor. Yi Zichen shook his head to indicate that it wasn't, but rather that he didn't know either. The transmission just now hadn't been the Hermit Emperor's. However, the way he saw it, the only person who could come at this time was the Hermit Emperor. He really couldn't think of anyone else. He looked up into the sky, wanting to see if it was the Hermit Emperor. Who would have thought? It's not very convenient. The voice transmission came from all directions again. Gu Li instantly laughed. He didn't know whether he'd headed in the direction of the transmission or not. In short, he was looking up at the void with a funny look in his eyes. Brother, your words are truly interesting. You hid in the sky like a coward, then sent me a transmission telling me to let Yi Zichen go. In the end, you still don't want to show your face. Do you think that I was scared since I was young? Do you really think that I would let you go just because you played some tricks on me? His words seemed to cause the person who had transmitted his voice to pause, and only after a long time did everyone hear a sigh. Your devil race has invaded the northern kingdom with such great fanfare, causing unrest in several cities around Blue Wave City. I didn't blame you because I wanted you to know your place. The monarch of the northern kingdom. Yi Zichen's eyes widened. From the sound of it, it sounded like the person in the sky was the king of the northern kingdom. He wasn't the only one. Gu Li realized the transmission's identity as well, but he didn't believe it. Instead, he sneered. Are you trying to say you're the king of the northern kingdom? How interesting. With just a few words, you're pretending to be the king of the northern kingdom. If you really are, then show yourself. What need is there to hide in the sky? Ignorant! Suddenly, a bowl-sized hole appeared in the clouds in the sky. A beam of azure light tore through the sky. Despite their cultivations, the left and right envoys couldn't see what was inside the azure light. All they could see was that it was heading straight for Gu Li. Holy Master, be careful! The right envoy roared, then frowned deeply. He took a step forward and unleashed a torrent of demonic power. Instantly, everything within a few hundred meters transformed into a purple demonic domain. To their surprise, the azure light didn't even pause when it touched the demonic domain. The left envoy's pupils constricted, and the right envoy's brows sank. It's too late. The beam of azure light was simply too fast. Furthermore, the space around it was compressed and distorted. Boom. Rubble flew everywhere. The ear-piercing sound of the explosion was unbearable. The right envoy protected Gu Li fiercely a second before the beam of azure light landed on him. However, perhaps the transmitter had never intended to take Gu Li's life in the first place. The beam of azure light didn't even land on him. Instead, it landed half a meter in front of him. When the azure light dissipated, everyone saw that it was actually an azure medallion. After confirming that Gu Li wasn't injured, the left envoy frowned and reached out with his right hand. The medallion embedded in the ground trembled a few times, then fell into the left envoy's hand. The left envoy looked at the medallion. When he saw the runes and words on it, his pupils constricted. When the right envoy sensed the change in the left envoy's expression, he was the most shocked. Although they hadn't grown up together, they'd known each other for 10,000 years. The left envoy was a man of few words and never smiled. However, his mental fortitude was unmatched by ordinary people. In the past 10,000 years, the right envoy had rarely seen the left envoy so panicked. He gently hooked his finger towards the azure medallion in the left envoy's practically frozen hand. When the medallion landed in the right envoy's hand, his brows instantly furrowed. The azure medallion trembled violently, then burrowed back into the sky. Gu Li looked at the two serious envoys and said, "What was that?" "Holy Master, let's retreat." "Holy Master, let's retreat," said the right envoy with a frown. "What exactly was that?" asked Gu Li solemnly. The right envoy narrowed his eyes and transmitted his divine sense to Gu Li. When he learned the newcomer's identity, Gu Li's expression froze despite himself. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," nodded the right envoy. Beneath his robes, Gu Li clenched his fists tightly. Then he looked intently at Yi Zichen. Why? So long as he was in danger, someone would always come to his rescue. Once or twice was one thing. He refused to accept this. He bit his lips so hard that purple blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. "Die." To everyone's surprise, Gu Li glared at him and reached for Yi Zichen's chest. This scene frightened the left and right envoys. At the same time, a cold snort echoed through the sky. "I gave you face, but you refused it." A beam of azure light descended from the sky, shattering Gu Li's entire right arm. Holy Master! Chapter 1503. Purple blood also splattered onto Yi Zichen's face. Although the azure light had injured Gu Li, Yi Zichen was still shocked beyond words. He was less than half a meter away from Gu Li. With his sea of consciousness sealed, Yi Zichen's physical body was only slightly better than a normal person's. Compared to a cultivator, even a normal Atman body realm cultivator was nothing. Gu Li wanted to kill him, so he couldn't escape. However, Yi Zichen wasn't shocked by his survival. Instead, he was shocked by the azure light that destroyed Gu Li's arm. Half a meter away, the azure light's power didn't even touch him, who was no different from a normal person. Even the slightest bit of its power dissipated when it was about to touch him. It was easy to increase the strength and range of one's battle skill attack, but to control it within the range of one's control, one needed to have great control over it. Even a slight miscalculation would have caused him to die to the remaining power of the azure light. Gu Li, who lost his right arm, half knelt on the ground as his eyes twitched. He wanted to kill Yi Zichen no matter what, but just a moment ago, he truly felt like he was so close to death. Just as the envoy of the right was pleading for Yi Zichen, a shout sounded out from the sky. F***ck off. The envoys of the left and right immediately dragged Gu Li away. "What are you doing?" Although Gu Li knelt on the ground in the face of death, that didn't affect his determination to kill Yi Zichen. "Kill him! Holy Lord, hurry up and leave," said the envoy of the right. "Are you disobeying my orders? I want you to kill him." Gu Li pointed at Yi Zichen with bloodshot eyes. "I want you to kill him. You might have gotten something wrong." At that moment, the taciturn special envoy Zwa glanced coldly at Gu Li. "We have always been under the orders of the Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor sent us to ensure your safety. Under the premise of your safety, we can help you deal with some trivial matters. However, when it comes to your safety, we can only guarantee your safety. Please don't make things difficult for us and leave with us. If you still insist on not changing, then I will take forceful measures against you. At that time, you will just have to plead guilty to the demon emperor," the left special envoy said indifferently. Gu Li had no choice but to swallow his anger at the envoy of the left's words. The envoy of the right took this opportunity to speak as well. "We are doing this for your own good. Please come with us." Gu Li neither agreed nor refused the two envoys' exhortations. Since he didn't say anything, it was a tacit agreement. The special envoy on the right hurriedly helped him up and glanced at the void above. Retreat. The envoys and the other demon experts all retreated from Bayubo City. Before they left, Gu Li's gaze lingered on Yi Zichen, so venomous it was enough to make one shudder. "Yi Zi, are you all right?" The great sage immediately arrived in front of Yi Zichen, narrowed his eyes, and shattered the seal the left emissary had placed on Yi Zichen's divine sea. He also felt powerless in the situation just now. The special envoy of the right's realm was similar to his, so he was restricted by the special envoy of the right, and so many sovereigns were pressing against his vitals. Even if he wanted to save Yi Zichen, he didn't have the strength. Fortunately, a benefactor had come to his aid at this critical moment. Yi Zichen shook his head and smiled at the great sage. Although the situation was dangerous, aside from the fact that his divine sea had been sealed, he was fine. What he cared about more was the person in the sky. Who exactly was he? Could it really be the King of the North? Yi Zichen took a deep breath, smoothed out his sleeves, and cupped his fists. "Senior, you are the King of the North. I thank you for saving my life. I was wondering if you could show yourself so that I could thank you in person. There's no need to worry about these complicated matters. You just need to remember that you owe me a favor." The voice rang out from the void. "Of course." Yi Zichen nodded. "The North can be considered the Yao's final haven. You're tainted by too much karma, so don't come back to the North in the future. Also, the Z family of Bayubo City is descended from the God race. Take them back to the God race and don't ever return to the North." "I understand," said Yi Zichen. "I still don't know who you are, but I sense that you're not the King of the North. Please tell me your name or title. That way, I'll return the favor. When I need you to return the favor, I'll naturally come looking for you." The voice transmission stopped there. The newcomer seemed to be deliberately sending Yi Zichen a signal to leave. The sky rippled, then disappeared before long. Yi Zichen remained outside the city, cupped his hands and bowed. When the ripples vanished completely, he looked up. "He's an expert," said the great sage solemnly. "I just don't know who he is, and why he saved me from danger." "He didn't reveal his name or title, nor did he show himself," said Yi Zichen. "It doesn't matter who he is as long as his intentions are good," laughed the great sage. "That's true," laughed Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen smiled. "That senior said that we shouldn't come to the North anymore, so we shouldn't. Fairy Zixia and the others can settle them in the Northern Divine Mountains capital, and our trip will be over." Before he'd even finished speaking, the sky distorted once more. Before long, the Hermit Emperor stroked his beard and smiled as he stepped through the air. "Hermit Emperor!" The great sage cupped his hands in greeting. "Senior Hermit Emperor!" Yi Zichen smiled sheepishly. "I'm not trying to torment you on purpose. Just now I was in grave danger, but a benefactor came to your aid, right?" The Hermit Emperor laughed, as if he knew everything. "You? Did that person show himself to you?" asked the Hermit Emperor. "No." Yi Zichen shook his head. "Do you know who it was?" "What did he say to you?" asked the Hermit Emperor. Yi Zichen didn't hesitate to repeat what he'd just heard. The Hermit Emperor stroked his beard and nodded repeatedly. He didn't want to be tainted by too much karma. Since he didn't want to be tainted, why bother? Even if he did, he'd still want to stay out of it. "In his dreams," sneered the Hermit Emperor. Based on the Hermit Emperor's words, he definitely knew who the newcomer was. "Then who exactly is he?" Yi Zichen frowned. If he doesn't want to tell me, I don't want to get on his bad side. Didn't he say that when he needed you to return the favor, he'd naturally come looking for you? You'll know when the time comes. Yi Zichen chuckled. Suddenly, the Hermit Emperor's chest chimed. The familiar sound caused both the great sage and Yi Zichen to arch their brows. The Hermit Emperor, however, chuckled. It's definitely someone from the other side. He's worried about you. He took out his phone and glanced at the message. Instantly, his expression grew unsightly. Chapter 1504. The Hermit Emperor could be considered one of the earliest rulers of the God realm. His long years had given him not only unparalleled attainments in the Tao of medicine, but he also knew a thing or two about the Tao of space. Even a great sage would need a day to traverse through the void. But with the support of the Hermit Thearcha's spatial Tao art, it took them less than an hour to return to the God race's territory. By the time they exited the tunnel, they were back in the northern Divine Mountains Sea of Innocence. Along the way, Yi Zichen tried to ask about the situation, but the Hermit Emperor's expression was solemn. He didn't answer. In the blink of an eye, they reached the Shui family's headquarters. "We're back." As soon as they entered, Yi Zichen saw Great Emperor Shuiyang, who was sitting in a pavilion atop a mountain peak. By his side was Zhao Qianling. Nothing unexpected happened, right? Nothing unexpected happened to him, of course. Even that person took action. What could possibly go wrong? Said the Hermit Emperor calmly, then scanned the Shui family with his divine sense. Is it all over? It's all in the past. Shuiyang nodded. That's good. Xianji is skilled in divination, and the Lord of the Big Dipper and Chao Feng knows some Qimen Dunjia. Who knows? We might be able to find some clues, said the Hermit Emperor. Shuiyang and Zhao Qianling nodded. Yi Zichen was puzzled as he listened to the Great Emperor's conversation. While he'd been away from the God realm for the Yao realm, something serious must have happened. Otherwise, the Great Emperors wouldn't have left so quickly. What happened? Asked Yi Zichen. It's hard to say. Shuiyang hesitated for a moment, then said, It's hard for us to explain right now. You just returned from the Yao realm, so don't worry too much. If there's news and we need you to know, we'll naturally tell you. Yi Zichen couldn't help but frown. What did they mean by saying they'd tell him when they needed him to know? That also meant they might not tell him. But when he thought about it, the Great Emperors naturally had their own plans. Yi Zichen didn't ask any more questions. He simply turned to Shuiyang and said, That's right. That's right, please prepare a mansion for me that can accommodate 1,000 people. This residence was prepared for the Zixia tribe. Now, the entire tribe was in the Yao Sealing Pagoda and had been brought back to the Shun clan. Yi Futian had already promised them that he would take care of the Zixia tribe's residence, even if it was for the sake of the great sage. We've already prepared the mansion. As he spoke, Yi Zichen sensed a wisp of his divine sense sweep outwards. At the same time, he heard the sound of something tearing through the air. Empyrean. Take little friend Yi and the others to the estate I opened up at the foot of the mountain a few days ago, said Shuiyang. The newcomer nodded and made an inviting gesture. Yi Zichen and the great sage cupped their fists and thanked Great Emperor Shuiyang, then followed the Shui family clansmen out of the pavilion. When did the news arrive? After watching Yi Zichen leave, the Hermit Emperor turned to Shuiyang. The moment I sent you the message was the moment it arrived, said Shuiyang. What's the exact situation? The Hermit Emperor asked. I'm not sure, said Shuiyang. I haven't heard from Bai and the others since they left. We'll have to wait until they get here to find out. Is that so? And here I thought you didn't want to tell Yi Zichen. The Hermit Emperor nodded in understanding. Then let's wait and see. At the foot of the Shui family's mountain. Most of the people living there were members of the Shui family's branch families. The Shui family wasn't like the other clans on the Divine Mountains. This is the estate the Great Emperor prepared for you. The Shui family clansmen stopped in front of a beautiful courtyard. It was backed by a mountain range and faced the sea. Yi Zichen had an impression of this place. It used to be an empty field. It seemed that Shui Yang really had opened up his new residence in the past few days. In such a short time, he'd decorated it with such beautiful scenery. It was obvious he'd put a lot of effort into it. If you have no other instructions, I'll be on my way. Go ahead. Yi Zichen nodded. When you get back, thank great Emperor Shui Yang for me. The Shui family clansmen nodded and left. Yi Zichen activated the Yao Ceiling Pagoda and released all of the Zixia family clansmen. There were quite a few healing pills within the pagoda. Before Zixia and the others entered, Yi Zichen removed the seals and had Zixia use the pills to treat their injuries. Although the Zixia family clansmen weren't completely healed, at the very least, they weren't as bad as they'd seemed in Jade Wave City. It's so beautiful. Fairy Zixia left the Yao Ceiling Pagoda and smiled sweetly at the scenery around her. Violet Cloud looked around in astonishment. This isn't a Yao? Asked Violet Cloud. This is the Sea of Innocence, the holy land of the northern divine mountain. Behind you is the Shui family. You can't live in Jade Wave City anymore, and I promised to take you to the God Realm. My relationship with the Sea of Innocence isn't bad, so you can live here in peace, said Yi Zichen. Violet Cloud's expression grew even more solemn. He'd thought Yi Zichen would, at most, find them a place to live. He never would have guessed he'd gone to such lengths to find them a place with such beautiful scenery and abundant spirit veins. It seemed he'd found the right partner. If he worked with the demons, it was hard to say what would happen to the Z family. At that moment the crowd stirred. A middle-aged man with a leg injury limped over with the help of a bystander. When he saw Yi Zichen, he directly knelt on the ground. Benefactor, thank you for saving our Z family from disaster, said the middle-aged man as he kowtowed. Dad! Violet Cloud knit his brows. Zixia's father? Yi Zichen instinctively glanced at the great sage, then hurriedly helped the middle-aged man to his feet. Please don't bow to me like that. I can't accept it. If you hadn't helped us, our Zixia. The middle-aged man hesitated. Yi Zichen hurriedly laughed. It was nothing. Don't mention it. Besides, to put it bluntly, I made a deal with your family. A deal? The middle-aged man didn't understand. Dad, he took the wooden box you gave to my sister, said Ziyun. So that's how it is. When the middle-aged man heard this, he didn't seem surprised or angry at all. Instead, he sighed in relief. It's good that he took it. Leaving it in the Z family is a disaster. So long as the demons don't take it, it's fine. But I still have to thank you for your help. Thank you so much. Chapter 1505. Yi Zi. The sudden introduction caused the great sage's face to redden. The other Z clansmen were bewildered as well. Only now did they notice that Fairy Zixia and the great sage were wearing matching outfit. Yi Zichen chuckled, ignoring the great sage's bashfulness. Perhaps you don't know him, but you should have seen for yourself that this rather shy fellow is my good brother. Don't be fooled by his bashfulness. Like I said, he's an emperor-level expert. Right, the Yao don't talk about emperors, but according to your Yao, he's a great Yao king. The surrounding clansmen were speechless. In the demon race, even the rulers of the 4 countries had to be courteous to such an existence. Even diviners were considered experts in Greenwave City, but there were no more than 3 rulers in the entire city. A great Yao king. They didn't even dare imagine it. To everyone's surprise, Fairy Zixia's face reddened as well. She stood awkwardly by the great sage's side, not daring to meet the other clansmen's eyes. Yi Zichen was determined to be a good person to the end. In his heart, the Supreme Treasure and Fairy Zixia were a match made in heaven. He would do anything to bring the two of them together, and to spare them the pain of lovesickness. My brother and Fairy Zixia love each other. Although there were some twists and turns along the way, they've long since given their hearts to each other. Senior, having an emperor-level son-in-law is quite an honor, isn't it? Isn't my brother much better off than the city lord's son? Never mind the Z family, not even the city lord of Greenwave City dared dream of having a great Yao king as his son-in-law. It was undeniable that the head of the Z family was stunned by the great sage's strength. But before long, he recovered his wits and sighed. I got it. Ziyun, he's the supreme treasure you mentioned to me before, right? Yes, father. Ziyun nodded. I'm the one who ruined Xiao'er's happiness. The head of the Z family smiled bitterly. I won't hide it from you. In truth, keeping Zixia away from the supreme treasure has always been my idea. That child Ziyun told me a few times in private that he wanted to help Zixia, but I refused. Father. Ziyun frowned. Don't ruin the relationship between you two siblings because of me. Besides, the future belongs to you youngsters. The patriarch of the Z clan laughed. Brother Zixia's eyes flashed as she looked at Ziyun. The leader of the Z clan also smiled bitterly at the great sage. You won't blame me, right? I wouldn't dare, said the great sage. Since you said that you don't dare, you naturally have resentment in your heart. It's all right, I can understand. The patriarch of the Z clan sighed. The atmosphere suddenly darkened. Yi Zichen, who was watching from the side, felt extremely anxious. You can't go on like this. Why mention this? As the saying goes, the road to happiness is strewn with setbacks. It's fine as long as the result is good. Yi Zichen laughed, then changed the topic. I believe that you must be someone who loves your children, but before that, you still have to bear the burden of your family's future. It's natural to have to make a choice. That's understandable. Now that you've come to the Shin clan, you don't have to worry about the future of the clan. The burden on your shoulders has lightened, so naturally, you won't obstruct Zixia Fairy's feelings, right? You're right, laughed the patriarch. He knew very well that Yi Zichen was giving him a way out of this embarrassing situation, so he immediately agreed. Fairy Zixia and the great sage's eyes lit up. Yi Zichen took advantage of this opportunity to speak up. Since everything's in the past, and you don't want to obstruct Fairy Zixia and the great sage's feelings, I'll take this opportunity to propose a marriage on behalf of my brother. With a wave of his hand, the courtyard was enveloped in dazzling, multicolored light. Here are 3,000 sets of demigod battle armor and 1,000 demigod weapons. Here are 20,000 bottles of recovery pills, spirit-nourishing pills, and other medicines. Here are talismans. And here are hundreds of spatial rings hung in the air. As Yi Zichen introduced them one by one, the Z family clansmen were dumbfounded. These are my betrothal gifts on behalf of my brother. Please accept them. The patriarch stared blankly at the rings. At Yi Zichen's command, the rings hovered in front of him. Although there aren't many things, they contain my sincerity, laughed Yi Zichen. Not many things. When the patriarch heard this, he felt like his heart was about to explode. These resources were enough to make the Z family a first-rate family clan in Bayubo City. With these resources, he was confident he could multiply the Z family's overall strength within 100 years. Yi Zichen didn't say much. My brother has suffered quite a bit by my side. Once he's married, I'll give them to the two of them. These are my betrothal gift. I hope you'll accept them. They were completely speechless. For better or worse, the patriarch of the Z family was the head of a clan. He controlled the clan's resources, but compared to Yi Zichen, he was a beggar. The dumbfounded Ziyun gulped and rubbed his sword. He didn't know what to say. Why aren't you saying anything? Yi Zichen arched his brows. If you don't say anything, I'll take that as agreement. With that, Yi Zichen glanced meaningfully at the great sage and Fairy Zixia. Thank you, father. Thank you, uncle. All right. Without waiting for the patriarch to respond, Yi Zichen laughed and said, Finally, lovers get together. You've just arrived in the God realm, and many of your clansmen are injured. I won't disturb you any longer. Yi Zi, I'm coming with you, said the great sage. Why are you leaving? Just stay here and wait for me. Your father-in-law has a lot of work to do. As his son-in-law, shouldn't you help him out? Yi Zichen glared at the great sage, then laughed and left. After leaving the Zi family estate, he was in a good mood. Letting the supreme treasure and fairy Zi Xia be together was actually his long-cherished wish. He hummed a little tune, took his phone out of his pocket, and sent a message to the group. Only idealism. Hey, you might not know this, but I just did something big. Only idealism. Are you guys back in Heavenly God City? Invincible, adorable beauty. I'm back. After a while, there was no response from the group. Yi Zichen couldn't help but feel puzzled. Given Pu Jingwan's personality, she wasn't in a good mood. Only idealism. Invincible, adorable beauty. Why are you in a bad mood today? Invincible, adorable beauty. I'm busy. Only idealism. What's up? After sending the message, Yi Zichen sent Xiao Yumei a private message. Yumei, what's going on? Pu Jingwan doesn't seem to be in a good mood. A few minutes later, Xiao Yumei's reply came through. It's not that she's in a bad mood, it's just that we really are a bit busy. What's going on? Do you remember Spirit City? Chapter 1506. Who on earth would be so bold? Everyone in the upper three realms knew that the Four Directions Palace was Great Emperor Bai An's faction. He treated all of his subordinates like his own children. The Third Highness's whereabouts were unknown. He must have been kidnapped. This was practically a declaration of war against the Four Directions Palace. Yi Zichen thought back to the conversation between Great Emperor Shuiyang and the Hermit Emperor. They were most likely talking about this. Yi Zichen frowned, then replied, Do you know the specifics? Things happened too suddenly, so our upheaval alliance didn't get the news too early. However, because we're relatively close to Spirit City, I heard that the people from the Four Directions Palace were in a terrible state after their souls were extracted. As soon as Jing Wan heard the news, she immediately brought a few sovereigns from the outer realms to Spirit City. Xiao Yumei's message came through. Has Zhou Wu made any movements? Asked Yi Zichen. The God Emperor's estate is the same as before. They haven't made any moves against us or Lady Providence's profound pavilion, said Xiao Yumei. Any news from Yang Jian? Xiao Yumei sent him a string of ellipses. You'll know if you look at the group chat. He hasn't been in the group recently. That's true. Of the 5 of them, Pu Jingwan was the only one who occasionally said a few words. They really didn't see any other messages. Ever since Yang Jian said he'd run into Bai Haoyu in the Lightning Emperor's estate, there'd been no further news. Could there have been an accident? Yi Zichen frowned, then found Yang Jian's chat window and opened it. He looked at it, then hesitated for a long while. He was worried that if he sent this message, the God Emperor's estate's people would discover that Yang Jian had a phone. If he didn't send this message, he wouldn't be able to rest easy. After hesitating for a while, Yi Zichen put his phone away. He'd wait until he reached Heavenly God City before making a decision. Ding. At that moment, Yi Zichen's phone rang again. This time, it wasn't a message from Xiao Yumei. Rather, it was a short video message from the invincible, adorable beauty. Hey look! He's become a corpse. Yi Zichen furrowed his brows and opened the video. In the video, Spirit City looked like a living hell. The air was filled with purplish-yellow corpse energy, and there were no signs of people living in the city. The streets were filled with walking corpses that looked like walking corpses. There wasn't much content in the short video, and it was difficult to explain the situation in Spirit City in detail with just a short video. It seemed like he'd have to go. After exiting the group, Yi Zichen found the Great Sage's chat and sent a message. You should build a good relationship with your future father-in-law. I'm going to Spirit City. Don't miss me. As soon as he sent the message, Yi Zichen put the phone back into his pocket, then dashed toward the transfer formation between the Sea of Innocence and Heavenly God City. Spirit City. Elder ancestor Bai's self-destruction had destroyed more than half of the city. If it was just the destruction of the city, it would not be a big deal. With the abilities of the God Clan's craftsmen, if they wanted to rebuild the city, as long as they invested enough craftsmen, it would not take more than half a month for the city to look brand new. However, because of this self-detonation, too many people died. From rulers to supremes, not a single one of them survived. Most of them had died a violent death, and their grievances ran deep. Because of this, the survivors found it difficult to continue living in the city, so they moved. Bai-un and the other great emperors were well aware of this, which was why they'd sent the third prince and his people to bury the dead. Your Majesty, we've confirmed the identities of the corpse mutineers below. Bai-an's scout from the Four Directions Palace reported. Bai-un looked at him darkly. A scout from the Four-Way Palace came to report, and Bai-un looked at him with a serious expression. These corpse mutineers should be Bai family clansmen or Spirit City residents, said the scout. These corpse shifters should be members of the Bai clan or the dead from Spirit City, the scout said. Should be? I want an accurate answer. Bai-un knit his brows. I'm sure they're Bai family clansmen or Spirit City residents. The scout gnashed his teeth and pulled out a strip of cloth. I took this from a corpse's robes. It has the Bai family's seal on it. Boom. Instantly, Bai-an's divine power surged out of him, and his intense pressure forced the scout to his knees. All right, there's nothing else for you to do. Let's go. Great Emperor Chao Feng walked out and waved at the scout. Your people aren't as obedient as I thought. Up in the sky, Great Emperor Chao Feng looked down at the walking corpses, then glanced casually at Bai-un. Naturally, he was talking to Bai-un. After exterminating the Bai family, the Four Directions Palace had been left behind to take care of the aftermath. Although it was supposed to be an extravagant burial, judging from the current situation, the Four Directions Palace's people had been rather sloppy in carrying out their orders. Resentment swirled around the entire city. So long as one closed their eyes, they could clearly hear the wails of the dead. An extravagant burial? It was probably so thick that it reached into their pockets. Even if you just ignored those people who died a violent death, things wouldn't have turned out this way. I'm just worried that your people handled things too carelessly and even touched something they shouldn't have. Go down and find out where the corpses came from. Do they have any belongings? Only now did the scout descend from the sky. Bai-an's expression was so dark that it looked like it was about to drip water. After a full hour, the scout returned to Bai-un. Your Majesty, there's a pit of corpses 300 miles ahead. The corpses came from there. Many of them have been burned to the point where only their skeletons remain. However, I haven't seen any of their belongings. Bring me the people from the Four Directions Palace who died earlier. Before long, the scout returned with the corpses whose souls had been stripped from their bodies. Bai-an's eyes narrowed as he removed their rings. Summoning the hidden dragon sword, he slashed viciously at the rings. The spatial rings shattered the moment they came into contact with the hidden dragon sword. Countless divine artifacts, talismans, and spiritual medicines rained down from the sky. Evil creature! Evil creature! Bai-un flew into a rage. The amount of resources within the ring had already reached a shocking level. Without a doubt, these resources must have been obtained from the bodies of the dead. He'd warned the third prince 3 times to give them an extravagant burial, most likely because of the accumulated resentment. However, his repeated warnings had fallen on deaf ears, and they'd even touched something they shouldn't have touched. You've profited from the dead. Old Seven, you've really taught them well, snorted Chao Feng. This wasn't deliberate mockery. Rather, the third prince's actions had crossed Chao Feng and the other great emperor's bottom line. If they hadn't acted so recklessly, how could Spirit City have fallen to its current state? Chapter 1507. There was no such thing as a proper burial for dead corpses. The only way to get rid of them was to kill them all. Even if doing so would increase the resentment in Spirit City, they had no choice but to do so. Although your Third Highness doesn't follow the rules, no matter how I look at it, it feels like someone's doing this behind the scenes. The Fox Empress, Su Qinyan, stepped forward, her hands gently stirring the air. As she waved her hand, one could vaguely see pieces of viscous liquid being stirred by her hand, creating ripples in the air. This was resentment that was on the verge of condensing into liquid. The resentment here is so thick that it's almost terrifying. If it were just to burn corpses and plunder treasures, the resentment wouldn't be so thick. It seems someone's deliberately nurturing this resentment. I know that, snorted Emperor Bian. At this moment, he blamed the Third Highness in his heart. This was inevitable. Regardless of whether or not someone was deliberately nurturing this resentment, if the Third Highness did as he'd ordered and buried all the dead in the city, the resentment would dissipate. The resentment in the city would also dissipate. No matter how intentional the people behind it were, the resentment would not be born again. After all, the corpses were already dead. This resentment was nothing more than the last vestiges of their energy. The Four Directions Palace had made a grave mistake, and he couldn't shirk this responsibility. But he absolutely couldn't spare the mastermind behind this, either. No matter how grave the Third Highness's dead subordinates were, he couldn't spare them. Whether they were killed or tortured was up to him. That person had dared drain their souls dry, and the Third Highness's fate was unknown. This was an intolerable provocation to Bian. Whoosh! A streak of starlight streaked through the sky. Yi Rong, the Lord of the Big Dipper, landed beside the emperors. "You've finished observing the stars?" asked Xiao Feng. The other party was very cautious. "Even though I deployed the stars, I wasn't able to find any traces of him," said Yi Rong. "However, I can roughly guess that these corpses are soulless. That person must have drained their souls. If I'm not mistaken, he's a corpse cultivator." "A corpse refiner?" asked Su Qinyan. The emperors narrowed their eyes. Cultivators were divided into several types: the demonic Tao, the Yao Tao, and the divine Tao. These were all relatively normal cultivation methods, and they were also the mainstream cultivation methods of the god, Yao, and demon races. However, amongst the myriad of cultivation methods, there was one known as the evil Tao. It was the corpse refiner Empress Su Qinyan had mentioned, the corpse Tao. These people usually refined corpses and controlled them to fight. The dead are the most important. Whether it was the divine clan, the demon clan, or the demon clan, they all despised this kind of people who could not let the dead rest in peace. He picked a good place. Xianji smiled coldly. For corpse refiners, the closest spirit city was naturally a good place to go. Countless people had died in the city, and there was no lack of rulers among them. They were excellent refining materials for corpse refiners. If an ordinary corpse refiner were to encounter such a situation, they would be overjoyed. "Auntie, I don't understand." Pu Jingwan suddenly scratched her head. The great emperors present all knew she was one of Yi Zichen's subordinates. After arriving in Spirit City, her cultivation was similar to theirs, so they naturally called her over. "Go on," said Yi Rong. "In truth, I've heard a little about corpse refiners. They refine corpse puppets to raise their cultivation or use them for their own purposes. But based on the current situation, it seems this corpse refiner hasn't used any of the corpses here," said Pu Jingwan. "There are over 100 million cultivators in Spirit City, and tens of millions have died. Do we see 1 million reanimated corpses?" asked Yi Rong. Pu Jingwan shook her head. "In that case, who can say for sure whether or not he's actually using the corpses? Besides, he was able to display his skills in such a vast corpse field, and he even abducted the Four Directions Palace's Third Highness and sucked the souls of his subordinates dry. How could he be mediocre? It's highly likely he's already picked out all the high-quality materials," said Yi Rong. "You're right. Then why is he nurturing so much resentment?" asked Pu Jingwan. The corpse refiner king. Yi Rong's expression grew solemn. Refining a corpse king is different from refining ordinary corpse puppet. It requires an enormous amount of resentment to sustain it. The only way he's doing this is to refine a corpse king. Corpse kings require a lot of materials, so unless something unexpected happens. When Yi Rong finished speaking, the great emperors understood. The Four Directions Palace was a peak-level faction of the God Realm, and its leader was Grand Emperor Baian, someone who caused the three realms to look askance at him. He was the person closest to the three emperors, second only to the three emperors. Someone who wanted to kill him? Was he looking to die? If this corpse refiner had once formed a grudge against the Four Directions Palace, then why was it that everyone else in the Four Directions Palace had their souls sucked dry? Why was the Third Highness the only one who had been abducted? Was he trying to blackmail him? No. Although Baian doted on the Four Directions Palace's Third Highness, he wasn't important enough to threaten Baian. Given all these circumstances, the possibility that he'd survived. Could it be that this corpse refiner wanted to use the Four Directions Palace's Third Highness body as a vessel to refine a corpse king? He's a corpse refiner who can refine corpse kings. Do you remember him? Asked Su Qingyan. Which corpse refiner would expose himself to us? The god, Yao, and demon races have only produced a few in tens of thousands of years, and they've all been killed, said Great Emperor Chaofeng. However, one corpse refiner did survive. After all this time, perhaps he's reached the stage where he can refine a corpse king. Who? Asked Yi Rong. Yi Rong hadn't been in the God Realm for long, so there were some secrets she didn't know. The others, however, had stayed in the God Realm for a long time. As soon as Chaofeng mentioned it, Baian, Xianji, and Su Qingyan frowned. Are you talking about him? Baian frowned. Chaofeng said nothing, but nodded. Yi Rong glanced at Xianji, and a transmission appeared in her mind. When she heard the contents of the transmission, Yi Rong's expression froze. Time passed. Everything had happened so suddenly that not many people from the Four Directions Palace had arrived. It took them half a day to wipe out all the walking corpses in Spirit City. Corpses littered the ground, covering the entirety of Spirit City. Even the great emperors felt a stab of pain in their hearts from the overflowing resentment. This place had become hell on earth. Prime Minister Turtle, Baian called out. An old man with a turtle shell on his back appeared from the ground. He was Baian's trusted aide for 10,000 years, the Prime Minister Turtle, second only to the Four Directions Palace. He'd summoned Baian because he wanted to send him out to investigate the corpse refiner's identity. But then, Chapter 1508. The 30-meter-tall skull hovered in the sky, its eyes glowing with green light as it pursued Yi Zichen relentlessly. If it weren't for the current situation, this scene would have been hilarious. The skull had been chasing Yi Zichen the entire way. As soon as he arrived outside Spirit City, to no surprise, he was frightened by the sky full of grievous energy. As far as the eye could see, the entire city was shrouded in grievous energy, and the streets were filled with walking corpses. Before long, he saw the Four Directions Palace's people, who'd followed Baian's orders to take care of the corpses. After confirming that the great emperors were in the city, Yi Zichen dashed inside. However, before long, a skull appeared in the sky. Yi Zichen instinctively met its gaze. Suddenly, the skull's eyes glowed with green light, and it charged at him like a madman. Emperor's Star! Zichen. The few great emperors frowned when they saw this. Instantly, colorful divine skills were released from their hands, exploding at the skulls. It was as dazzling as fireworks. Yi Zichen glanced behind him. The skull had been smashed to smithereens by the great emperor's attacks. Only then did Yi Zichen give them a thumbs up and grin foolishly. What are you grinning about? Look behind you! Pu Jingwan frowned and roared in anger, then rushed towards Yi Zichen. Only then did Yi Zichen turn around and take another look. The shattered skull had returned to its original form, and it even grinned in a very human-like manner. "Screw you!" He reached out with his right arm, and the Xianyuan sword emerged from it. He grabbed the hilt of the Xianyuan sword and swung it at the skull. Sword light sliced through the air, cutting the surrounding space to shreds. The skull split in two, but the two halves fused back together. This time, it was even larger than before. Empress Su Qinyan and the Four Directions Palace's Emperor Bian stepped through the air. Master of the Stars stepped back. Pu Jingwan appeared by Yi Zichen's side, grabbed him by the shoulder, and hurried over to Emperor Chao Feng and the Lord of the Big Dipper. "Zichen, why did you come here?" Yi Rong looked at Yi Zichen worriedly. "Are you hurt?" "How is that possible?" Yi Zichen chuckled. What a huge amount of resentment. Was it all left behind by the dead? Yi Rong and the others nodded, then turned to look at Great Emperor Bian and Empress Su Qinyan. "The skull chasing you seems to be condensed from resentment. However, normally, this kind of thing condensed from evil and filth requires a holy item to dispel it. I wonder if they, to everyone's surprise, when the skull saw Bian and Su Qinyan, it came to a halt. Although the dark light in its eyes was still frightening, it didn't take the initiative to attack like it had when it was chasing Yi Zichen. The huge head floated in the void, and one could vaguely see its color. "Why are you two here?" F***CK, the skull is talking. Yi Zichen's eyes widened as he reached out and stared at the skull in astonishment. It doesn't look like it was formed purely from resentment. It seems it knows Su Qinyan and Great Emperor Bian. "It wasn't easy for me to find a good furnace, but you ruined my plans." The Four Directions Palace's cultivators paled in fright. Meanwhile, Great Emperor Bian's gaze darkened. "So it really is you. I never would have guessed that place would fulfill its promise all those years ago and raise you into a Lich King." "You're wrong," snorted the skull. "I left there a long time ago." "What? Didn't they fulfill their promise?" asked Bian. "They fulfilled their promise." The skull was suddenly enraged, and its shrill howl was ear-splitting. "I almost died at their hands." "That's quite a sight to behold," sneered Su Qinyan. Suddenly, the skull twisted its enormous head and looked in Su Qinyan's direction. After a long period of silence, the skull finally spoke. "Big Sister Qinyan, aren't you being too cruel?" All of Spirit City seemed to fall silent. Whether it was Bian, Xianji, or Chao Feng, their eyes brimmed with undisguised astonishment. Big Sister? Was this Lich King in the form of a skull Su Qinyan's little brother? Everyone stared in shock. Among them, Xianji, who was on relatively good terms with the foxes, knit her brows deeply. As far as she could remember, Su Qinyan once had a younger brother. However, the corpse refinement incident had happened in the Nine-Tailed Fox clan. Countless fox clansmen had been refined into corpse puppets, and Su Qinyan had said that her little brother had died in the aftermath. Su Qinyan had put in the most effort to eradicate the corpse refiner. Everyone thought that she was taking revenge for her dead brother and her dead clansmen. Could it be that this corpse refiner was her little brother? "Shut up!" roared Su Qinyan, her eyes bloodshot. "You really are heartless." The skull shook its head with a smile, and the skull formed from resentment directly dissipated from the world. Not long after, a vermilion cloud formed from resentment appeared in everyone's line of sight. Above the cloud was a handsome young man with a red face and white teeth. He was walking on the cloud. "Lil Hai." Xianji couldn't help but cover her mouth. She recognized this youth. He was Su Qingyan's youngest brother. "Su Hai." "Oh, Big Sister Xianji, you still remember me?" Su Hai smiled and nodded at Xianji, then glanced at Su Qingyan. "Big Sister Qingyan, even Big Sister Xianji recognizes me. How could you, as his older sister, forget your little brother? You're not Lil Hai, you're not." Su Qingyan's eyes were bloodshot. Waves of red energy formed from her rage and seeped out of her body. The energy swirled around her, and a pair of furry white fox ears sprouted from her head. 9 snow-white tails floated behind her. In the blink of an eye, the sky darkened, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. A turbulent spiritual pressure permeated the entire city. Even diviners would feel their blood flow impeded. All of Spirit City was enveloped in darkness. Even Xianji, Chaofeng, and the others couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. This was the power of the strongest empress of the 3 realms. Big Sister Qinyan, you're too unfriendly. I'm your little brother. Even though I'm a stain on the 9-tailed fox clan's reputation, you don't have to want to kill me. Chapter 1509. It was supposed to be spring, but in the blink of an eye, Su Qinyan had turned it into winter. The entirety of Spirit City had been sealed in ice. At this moment, it didn't seem like a city meant for people to live in. Instead, it seemed more like a work of art that had been sculpted by a master craftsman. This craftsman was none other than the Fox Empress, Su Qinyan. What a powerful chill! Yi Zichen couldn't help but shiver. He'd experienced this sort of chill before. It was the breath of ice Su Luer had released earlier. However, compared to Su Luer's breath of ice, Empress Su Qinyan couldn't compare. 10,000 times stronger. It was snowing heavily. The ground and roofs of the city were soon covered in a thick layer of ice and snow. Su Qingyan's white tail seemed to fuse with the world. The smile on Su Hai's face gradually froze as he looked at Su Qingyan's sharp gaze. Big Sis Qinyan, you. We'll meet again. Evil and filthy creature, die. Su Qinyan waved her right hand. Just as Su Hai was about to shatter the void and escape, he was frozen into an ice sculpture. He slammed into the ground and shattered into dazzling ice crystals. Yi Zichen subconsciously gulped. F***CK. It was an instant kill. Empress Su Qingyan's breath of glacial frost has probably reached greater mastery, sighed Emperor Chaofeng. The ice breath was created by the fox ancestor of the heavenly 9-tailed fox clan in ancient times. It was a divine skill comparable to the god's descent skill. The fox clan's peak period was also when this fox ancestor was in power. He single-handedly killed his way into the Fiend clan and killed dozens of Fiend Celestials, causing the Fiend clan to tremble in fear at the sound of his name. During the Great War of Gods and Demons, it was also thanks to the fox ancestor's ice breath that he was able to seal the strongest demon god in the myriad of worlds back then. From then on, the fox clan declined. The fox ancestor's ice breath was left behind. However, only the 9-tailed heavenly demon fox clan's bloodline, and only those with the ice attribute could cultivate it. Millions of years. Of the entire fox clan, only Su Qinyan had succeeded. From then on, the fox clan's rise was unstoppable. In less than 100 years, the fox clan had returned to the ranks of the sacred beast. The title of Great Empress of the White Fox clan came from this. After dealing with Su Hai, Su Qinyan didn't stop there. Countless frigid currents swept through Spirit City. Not long after, you're actually hiding here. A sharp icicle appeared in Su Qingyan's hand. With a wave of her arm, the icicle shot toward the ground 10,000 miles away. Before the icicle fell, the frozen ground shattered. A burly, sloppy-looking middle-aged man crawled out from under the ice. Lich King. The few great thearchs frowned. This was the corpse forger that they had besieged back then. Even though the corpse forger had been wearing a long robe back then and his face couldn't be seen clearly, his figure was exactly the same as it was 10,000 years ago. Old Yao, what a good furnace! The Lich King crawled out of the ice, a pained expression on his face. Su Hai, whom Su Qinyan had just killed, was one of the best cultivation furnaces he'd scoured the entire continent for. Little girl, since you destroyed my cultivation furnace, I won't let you have it easy. 10,000 miles away, the Lich King let out a shrill roar. Then, he spoke with a sinister expression. Corpse refinement. Kacha kacha. Countless refined corpse troopers crawled out of the frozen city. Their eyes glowed with an eerie green light as they twisted their necks and lunged at Su Qinyan. There were at least several million of them. Humph! Su Qingyan's lips curved into a cold smile. A cold wave swept past the troopers. 1,000,000 corpse troopers were sealed in ice. This little girl. The Lich King glared at the frozen corpse troopers. They were nothing more than a product he'd casually picked up from the ground and refined. They weren't his little treasures. However, 1,000,000 corpse troopers had been sealed in ice in an instant. This little girl was going to be a pain in the ass. Even if he released all of his precious treasures, they wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being sealed in ice. These treasures were the product of his blood, sweat, and tears. If they were sealed and destroyed, he'd be heartbroken. This one's a pain in the ass. Time to run. A man had to know when to yield and when to stand tall. Back then, he'd been forced to flee by these people. Running away again wasn't a big deal. A gentleman's revenge was a dish best served cold. Although this was a good place to refine corpses, he'd collected most of the high-quality materials and enough resentment essence. So long as he had enough time, he could refine the Corpse King. These people, each and every one of them, had to die. Just you wait for me. You want to run? Su Qingyan waved her hand again. The Lich King, who hadn't gotten very far, clenched his teeth and threw out a corpse trooper. The corpse trooper immediately shattered into an ice sculpture. The Lich King gnashed his teeth. My treasures! Just you wait. Humph. Let's see how many more corpse troopers you can throw out. Countless streams of frigid air assaulted the Lich King. The fleeing Lich King's face was ashen. Although he didn't want to give up, he didn't dare hesitate. He threw more and more corpse troopers out of the city. At first, he only threw diviner-level corpse troopers. Later, he started tossing out sovereigns. Screw you, little girl. You're not done yet, are you? The Lich King's heart ached as he tossed out more and more corpse troopers. As he tossed the corpse puppets out, he gnashed his teeth and cursed Su Qingyan. In the end, the Lich King ran out of corpse troopers to throw out. He looked back at the corpse troopers he'd tossed out along the way. They were the result of 10,000 years of blood, sweat, and tears. Gone. They were all gone. The frigid air continued to assail him. The Lich King's face was ashen, his eyes bloodshot, and he gnashed his teeth. Just you wait. The Lich King tore off one of his arms. A bloody mist erupted, along with countless vengeful spirits and resentment. The vengeful spirits blocked his frigid air. The Lich King took advantage of this opportunity to shatter the void and vanish without a trace. Up in the sky, the Lich King's furious roars continued unabated. Empress Su Luer gnashed her teeth. What were you doing just now? All you did was stand there. Why didn't you help? The great emperors couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Just now, Su Qingyan's display of power was simply too overwhelming. They'd only wanted to watch the show, not to help. Now that she said this, Lao Ai, who was standing beside her, smiled embarrassedly. As if to vent her anger, Su Qingyan crushed the millions of corpse troopers the Lich King had casually refined. The other great emperors laughed drily as they watched. Look. Chapter 1510. To Su Qingyan, these vengeful ghosts posed no threat at all. Judging from the aura exuded by these malicious ghosts, even the strongest among them were only ghosts that had just entered the celestial being realm. Given Su Qingyan's ability to freeze 1,000,000 corpse troopers with a wave of her hand, dealing with these ghosts was as easy as snapping a finger. The other great emperors did the same. Even Pu Jingwan could deal with these ghosts in the blink of an eye. However, none of the great emperors present did that. They only slightly restricted the movements of the malicious spirits and looked at them with pity in their eyes. These ghosts were pitiful people. They'd clearly led happy lives when they were alive, but the Lich King had drained their souls and refined them into his own body. He'd sealed their souls and prevented them from reincarnating, so they'd constantly nurtured resentment and used it to raise their own cultivation. Every corpse refiner raised their cultivation this way. The Lich King wasn't the only one. This was why corpse refiners were viewed by the three races as evil cultivators. They had no place to live. The Tao of corpses shouldn't exist in this world. Looking at the malicious ghosts before them, the few great emperors couldn't bear to watch. Sealing them like this isn't a solution. These ghosts have been sealed away by the Lich King for too long. Their resentment is already too deep. It's impossible for them to regain their clarity on their own, said Su Qinyan. If only we had an expert from the Buddhist domain here, said Xianji. Yi Zichen couldn't help but frown. He naturally understood why Xianji was sighing. The Buddhist domain was sacred. If there were a Buddha here, he could recite sutras and help these souls ascend to the afterlife, giving them peace of mind and allowing them to reincarnate. Could it be that he had to call the great sage over? Right now, the only expert he knew of from the Buddhist domain was the great sage. Your Majesty. Right at this moment, a wisp of clarity flashed across the eyes of one of the sealed ghosts. With a hoarse voice, he slowly knelt down to Lao Ai with the help of the confined space. The great emperors looked over, and Bayan also frowned. Zhao Jie. This man was one of the 6 generals under Lao Ai. He was also the 3rd prince's teacher when he was chosen by Lao Ai and brought back to the Four-Direction Palace. During the 3rd prince's coming-of-age ceremony, he bestowed him as an advisor to assist the 3rd prince in handling some matters in the Four-Direction Palace. He had followed the 3rd prince here during the incident at Spirit City, and he was one of the corpses whose souls had been sucked dry. I beg you to kill me. Zhao Jie looked like he was in great pain. Kneeling in the void, he kept grabbing his head, looking like he would be devoured by the resentment at any moment. Lao Ai's shoulders trembled uncontrollably as he stared at the once iron-boned warrior before him. The other great sovereigns more or less knew about Zhao Jie's deeds and his relationship with Bayan. Everyone was silent as they looked at Tao Wu's position. Your Majesty, please give me a quick death. Even if my soul is destroyed and I can never reincarnate, I don't want to live like this. Your Majesty, Zhao Jie begs you. This was his trusted aide who had followed him to conquer the world thousands of years ago. Even if a knife was placed on his neck, he wouldn't even bat an eyelid. Even if 10,000 swords pierced his body, his knees would never touch the ground. But now, he was begging for death. Some of the other wraiths had regained some of their rationality, and they all looked like they were begging for death. Instantly, Bayan's eyes reddened. The other great sovereigns couldn't bear to see him like this. All right. Bayan's voice was choked with emotion. The hidden dragon sword in his hand wailed, as if it were sending off an old friend. When he saw Bayan rise with his sword, Zhao Jie revealed a look of relief. Exterminate, Ahmed Ba! In an instant, a deep Buddhist voice came from all directions. The people from the Buddhist realm had definitely arrived. He definitely hadn't heard wrong. Bayan instantly stopped his sword. Even though he was about to unleash his sword technique, the backlash caused a trickle of blood to trickle down the corner of his mouth. He didn't care. As long as he could let his old friend return safely, even if the backlash would severely injure him, he was willing to do so. After a long time, a flash of golden light appeared in the void. It was as dazzling as the morning sun, and it enveloped all of Spirit City. Wherever the golden light passed, all of the resentment vanished like smoke. Then came a series of Buddhist chants that were difficult to understand, like a spring breeze caressing one's face. The wraith's expressions became serene, and the resentment between heaven and earth faded away. Countless departed souls emerged from the corpses of the dead, or were stripped of their resentment. Their eyes were filled with gratitude as they kowtowed deeply to the golden light. Then, their souls drifted away. Your Majesty, Zhao Jie, whose soul glowed with golden light, floated to Bayan's side and kowtowed deeply. This subordinate has failed to live up to your expectations and led His Highness astray. 100 deaths cannot atone for this subordinate's sins. Zhao Jie. At this point, Bayan didn't know what to say. In truth, He didn't blame Zhao Jie at all for His Highness's actions. He had chosen Zhao Jie from the lower realms, so how could he not know his temperament? Bian had sent Zhao Jie to His Highness's side in hopes that he could keep His Highness in check. "This isn't your fault," Bian said. "I've fought alongside you for 10,000 years, and I truly wish I could see you ascend to the throne." Zhao Jie smiled sadly. "This subordinate is a crude man, so it's a little strange for me to say such sentimental things. Since I can no longer fight alongside your Majesty, I wish you prosperity on your martial path. Please treat them well for me as well, mother and daughter." "All right." Bian nodded solemnly. "In that case, farewell." Cupping his fists, Zhao Jie, like the countless departed souls in Spirit City, merged into the river of souls. The rims of Bai An's eyes were bloodshot, and he clenched his fists tightly, refusing to loosen them. The various great emperors also watched the river of souls as it gradually disappeared from Spirit City. Multicolored light illuminated the world. The long chanting of sutras cleared the city of resentment. Resplendent light pierced through the heavy darkness, filling the city with an aura of life. "Many thanks for Buddha's benevolence." The lofty and unyielding Bian lowered his proud head, but the golden light didn't respond. Just as abruptly as he'd arrived, he left. From start to finish, not a single one of the great emperors in Spirit City saw through the Buddha's true form. Only Yi Zichen's expression was somewhat strange. He frowned at the spot where the golden light had faded, and said nothing for a long time. "Prime Minister Turtle, this old servant is here." The old man with the turtle shell on his back slowly walked up to Bai An's side. Chapter 15:11. Once the Buddhist ancestor finished delivering Spirit City to the afterlife, the city's resentment dissipated. Yi Zichen and the others didn't linger and left the city. However, the Lich King's appearance caused the great emperor's hearts to sink. This was especially true of Empress Su Qinyan and the Four Directions Palace's great emperor Bian. The Empress's younger brother was clearly dead, yet the Lich King had created him. This was blasphemy, and completely crossed the Empress's bottom line. Great Emperor Bian's brother, who'd fought with him for 10,000 years, had his soul extracted. From then on, they were separated by life and death. The two great emperors now had a blood feud with the Lich King. As soon as they left Spirit City, they returned to their clans and swore to find the Lich King, even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground. Great Emperor Chao Feng and the Lord of 7 Stars, Yi Rong, returned to the Star Altar. Ever since the Bai family incident, they hadn't returned to the Star Altar. The Society of Saints couldn't remain leaderless forever. While the Empress and Great Emperor Bian were gone, the two of them took the opportunity to go back and take a look. As for the situation in Spirit City, the great emperors had long since created a group chat. They could discuss the specifics in the group. "Both Great Emperor Bian and Empress Su Qinyan are furious. Do I need you to tell me? Who can't tell? I really didn't come to your third era for nothing. I ran into so many sites I could only read about in ancient texts. Even the Lich King counts? I guess so." Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan naturally had to return to Heavenly God City. The conversation they'd had just now was what they'd been talking about. Thud thud. Both of them were knocked on the head. When they turned around, they saw Xian Ji frowning at them. "Who told you two to gossip behind my back?" When they heard that, they smiled awkwardly and said nothing. Xian Ji's expression grew serious. "We'll be returning to Heavenly God City in a moment." Yi Zichen and the others naturally knew what she meant. During this time, they'd mostly stayed in the northern Divine Mountain, the Sea of Innocence, or traveled to the Yao's northern kingdom. Although they'd sent their subordinates back to the central Divine Mountain, Zhou Wu hadn't shown his face in Heavenly God City. This trip back to the city could be considered their first clash with the God Emperor. Whether or not Zhou Wu would play any tricks was something that could only be determined after they entered the city. "The most important thing is you. Now that you're in Heavenly God City, You'll be under the watchful eye of the God Emperor's estate and Zhou Wu. Even if the Shui family used Shuetai as a cover for you, it's impossible to tell what Zhou Wu is thinking. None of us know what the Divine Arbiter reported to you, so you should be careful. Ji Yi said to Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen nodded, then looked at Heavenly God City, which was just inches away. He took a deep breath, then flew directly into the city. In the city, Heavenly God City was still as prosperous as before. Everything was pretty much the same as before he left. However, as soon as they entered the city, several auras swept over them. When they sensed these auras, Xian Ji and Yi Zichen looked at each other, then nodded. I'm returning to the profound pavilion. With that, she gently patted her pocket. Yi Zichen smiled and nodded, then watched her leave. Let's go back to the Upheaval Alliance. As soon as he entered, Yi Zichen was shocked by the situation inside. He could clearly sense that the number of rulers and diviners had multiplied, and the number of Sky Supremes and Earth Supremes was frightening. The moment Yi Zichen entered the alliance, Xiao Yumei hurried over. This person. Ding. Yi Zichen's phone buzzed, and Xiao Yumei shot him a meaningful glance. He nodded, took out his phone, and saw that he'd received a message. This isn't the place to talk. Let's head inside. Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan followed Xiao Yumei into the Upheaval Alliance's inner sect. After passing through countless gravel paths, they stopped in front of an artificial mountain. She gently touched the mountain, and a door of light appeared in front of it. Xiao Yumei shot Yi Zichen a meaningful glance, then walked in first. Yi Zichen glanced back and forth a few times, then followed. Alliance Head. Beyond the door of light was a completely different world. As soon as they entered, Yi Zichen saw Xiao Hu, Xiao Yan, Wei Jie, and the other higher-ups of the alliance. Xiao Yumei nodded at them, then smiled and explained, "This secret realm is a divine artifact sent over by the outsiders. This mystic realm is a divine artifact sent over by an outsider. Even Zhou Wu can't extend his divine sense into this place. The upper echelons of the alliance are all here to discuss matters." That's right. Yi Zichen nodded. This secret realm was vast. It wasn't endless, but it was big enough to house 1 million people. Although it was a divine artifact, he could still sense the flow of the world's laws. That's not all. The flow of time inside and outside is different, said Xiao Yumei. A day outside is 100 days inside. This place can be used to cultivate talent. 100 times the time is more than enough for the Upheaval Alliance to grow by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. The outsiders really do have divine artifacts like this. Yi Zichen couldn't help but sigh. He'd mentioned this divine artifact while negotiating with the outsiders. In truth, he'd never even considered the possibility that it would actually exist. He just mentioned it casually. He never would have guessed they'd actually send it over. Those people outside are. The outsiders came a few days ago and left behind a group of people to prepare for battle, said Xiao Yumei. Quite a few of them were sent here by the Divine Mountains, as well as people who heard of our reputation. Heard of our reputation? The Upheaval Alliance's rise to power is rapid, and they have connections with the other Divine Mountains. Although they're just a new faction, it's only natural that some people want to join us. But it's also possible that other factions sent spies, such as the God Emperor's estate and the Lightning Emperor's estate, said Yi Zichen. That's right. Xiao Yumei nodded. I'll send people to investigate the backgrounds of those who came because of the fame. However, if they want to send people here, they'll naturally do it very cleanly. It'll be hard to determine who they're truly loyal to in a short time. We can't really kick them out either. There are bound to be people who sincerely want to join us. That's a real problem, said Pu Jingwan. What's so difficult about that? If they want to send us people, we'll just use them. Yi Zichen didn't have to worry about it. If they wanted to establish a faction, they'd definitely send spies. This was unavoidable. He'd already sent people to the Lightning Emperor's estate, so how could they not send more? Right, how are things going in Spirit City? Asked Xiao Yumei. Chapter 15:12. He hadn't heard from Yang Jian for nearly a month. Yi Zichen had joined Xiao Ting's forces as a spy, then encountered by Hao Yu, who'd been massacred. It didn't matter that he didn't have any information, but he hadn't even sent word that he was safe. How could Yi Zichen not worry? Our neighbors have been pretty peaceful lately. Anyone who was in the secret realm knew that he was referring to the Lightning Emperor's estate. Is there any news of Yang Jian? Yi Zichen's questions were met with the same negative response. His heart sank further. It was one thing that Yang Jian hadn't reported his safety within the group, but there was no news of him outside either. After all, he was a special emissary from the outside, a peerless imperial emperor. Yi Zichen refused to believe that Yang Jian wouldn't make use of this resource to his advantage. Could it be that he hadn't infiltrated their ranks yet? That didn't make much sense. If he hadn't infiltrated their ranks, he could have found an opportunity to say a few words in the group chat. Hey, why isn't the great sage by your side this time? Asked Pu Jingwan. I arranged a marriage for him, so he should be getting to know his father-in-law and brother-in-law, replied Yi Zichen absent-mindedly. Yi Zichen replied absent-mindedly. At that moment, he was completely focused on Yang Jian. He couldn't bear listening to Pu Jingwan talk any longer. After a long silence, he took out his phone. He opened Yang Jian's chat window, wrote a message and sent it. Message failed. Is this place blocked from the internet? Yi Zichen glanced at Xiao Yumei. Of course. This is a divine artifact from the outside. The internet hasn't reached this place yet, said Xiao Yumei. How do we get out of here? Just go through that door. When he heard that, Yi Zichen walked through the door. When he emerged, he found himself in the same artificial mountain Xiao Yumei had entered earlier. He took a few glances at the surroundings. This divine artifact blended in very well with the surrounding scenery. Even when he probed it with his divine sense, he couldn't tell that it was an independent space carved out by a divine artifact. Ding-dong, ding-dong, ding-dong. At practically the same time, Pu Jingwan and Xiao Yumei, who'd followed Yi Zichen out of the secret realm, received a series of notifications. The only thing that could make all three of them receive a notification at the same time was instantly taking out their phones. The three of them opened the group chat in unison. The chat group, which had been quiet for almost a month, was flooded with more than 99 messages a few minutes ago. In the group chat, everyone also saw Yang Jian, who had disappeared for nearly a month, return to everyone's line of sight. Yi Zichen saw how anxious he was in the group. His entire screen was filled with messages from Yi Zichen. Even now, Yi Zichen's messages were still flooding the screen. Only idealism. Here. Invincible adorable beauty. It's fine if you don't come out, but when you do, it's amazing. What are you doing? Are you trying to blow up our phones? Monkey King. Erlang Shen, don't mention me. Yi Zi is here. Invincible adorable beauty. Monkey King, you're here too? I heard from Yi Zichen that you were having a heart-to-heart with my brother-in-law and father-in-law? Monkey King, facepalm. Erlang Shen, Yi Zi, you're finally out. Where did you go just now? I was so worried. Only idealism. There was no signal just now. What's going on? Why are you in such a hurry? Invincible adorable beauty. Normally, you don't even tell me you're safe. Yi Zichen is so worried. The three of you are really passionate. Erlingshin, I haven't had a chance to tell you that I'm safe these past few days. Erlingshin, I've been busy with serious business. Only idealism. Is there something important? Could it be? Xiao Ting can't take it anymore and is about to make a move? The Lightning Emperor's estate had already joined forces with the other clans. Xiao, who had seen this with his own eyes, and the Fox Empress, Su Qinyan, had mentioned it to him. They'd established the upheaval alliance here in order to intimidate Xiao Ting. Now that Yang Jian had mentioned him in the group chat, it was highly likely that Xiao Ting had made a move. As soon as the message was sent, practically everyone in the group waited for Yang Jian's reply. What's going on? Why did he disappear halfway through? Pu Jingwan arched her brows. I'll mention him in the group. Don't. Yi Zichen hurriedly stopped her. Just now, Yang Jian said that he hasn't been keeping us safe for the past few days. It's obvious that someone's keeping an eye on him. Just now, he took a risk and tried to send us a message. Who knows, maybe he's in trouble again. Let's wait for Yang Jian. If it's really as Zichen said and Xiao Ting is making a move, we need to prepare as soon as possible, said Xiao Yumei. As for the great sage, he hadn't appeared in the group either. It seemed he knew that Yang Jian couldn't talk to them in the group chat. If he sent a message, he might expose himself, and the situation would become dangerous. As a result, he could only wait in silence for Yang Jian's message. Everything was just as the great sage and Yi Zichen had predicted. Yang Jian really couldn't communicate with them in the group. Just now, Uncle An had come to visit and said that the Lightning Emperor had something to discuss with them. He was currently standing behind Uncle An, with the Bai families by Haoyu by his side. The two of them stared intently ahead. They didn't exchange any glances, but their divine sense transmissions never stopped. Did you send the message? Asked Bai Haoyu. No, I didn't have time. I was just about to tell them when Uncle An showed up. How stupid, said Bai Haoyu. Couldn't you have just sent the message to your so-called group chat? Did you really have to communicate with them in real time? Do you know how hard it was to buy you those few minutes? Great. I didn't even send the message. Who knows, I might be exposed. Yang Jian's expression froze. Indeed, even if Yi Zichen and the others weren't here, he could have just sent the message to the group chat. Once they saw it, they'd understand. He'd been careless. He'd failed to send the most important message. However, he couldn't quite figure out what kind of person Bai Haoyu was. Back at the Bai family, he'd fought them to the death. Why was he suddenly on their side now? The first night they'd entered the Xiao family estate, he'd asked Bai Haoyu, but his answer had been vague. Who exactly are you? Chapter 1513. The interior of the palace was vast. It could hold 1,000 people. Currently, the Lightning Emperor was the only one sitting in the main hall. Even though Uncle An had brought Yang Jian and Bai Haoyu inside, Xiao Ting didn't seem to notice. His hands trembled as he held a piece of tin foil, which had some white powder on it. Uncle An didn't say a word. He knew Xiao Ting hated it when people sucked on the powder. It made him especially irritable. Yang Jian and Bai Haoyu naturally didn't say anything either. They just stood there quietly waiting. Let me tell you some shocking news. Someone is actually controlling the Lightning Emperor. Is that why I came to the Lightning Emperor's estate to investigate? At that moment, Bai Haoyu's divine sense transmission exploded in Yang Jian's sea of consciousness. Yang Jian stood with his head bowed, his brows raised, and his gaze flickered. What do you mean? Someone's secretly controlling the Lightning Emperor? You must be joking. He's the Xiao family's Lightning Emperor. Who could possibly control his thoughts? Who said anything about controlling his sea of consciousness? Can't I just use an external object? Said Bai Haoyu. Think about it. Why did the Lightning Emperor suddenly abdicate in the prime of his life? He didn't care about the Xiao family at all and threw all of his attention to Xiao Yan, who didn't like politics to begin with. What's wrong with raising the younger generation? If he's raising the younger generation, why did he take back the position of family head just as Xiao Yan was getting better? Asked Bai Haoyu. Yang Jian said nothing. He naturally knew why Xiao Ting had suddenly returned to fight for the position of family head. Xiao Ting was collaborating with the demons and Yao to plot a rebellion. Xiao Yan didn't agree with his political views. In order to take control of the Xiao family and use it as a bargaining chip, Xiao Ting naturally wanted to take back the position. Yang Jian knew all of this, but he couldn't tell Bai Haoyu. He still couldn't confirm this person's identity. Perhaps he was just trying to get information out of him. It seems you're still on guard against me? Asked Bai Haoyu. Shouldn't I be? Yang Jian transmitted. Back at the Bai family, you injured Zichen so badly. You cut off one of his arms and injured his left eye. Not seeking revenge is already the limit of what I can do. Do you really think I'd share my information with you? I'm doing this for his own good. Your mother's fart. Hey, why are you cursing? Bai Haoyu arched an eyebrow. I injured his left eye in preparation for him to open his celestial eye. Let me ask you this. Did he open his celestial eye on his left eye? Of course, there was a reason for injuring his left arm. Let me share some information with you. Do you know the devil chosen by heaven? The Emperor Star's right arm is gone? The shock in Yang Jian's heart could no longer be described with words. By how you actually knew that the Emperor Star's eye was opened in the left eye, and now he said that the demon race's Emperor Star's right arm had been destroyed. Left arm and right arm. Could it be that there was some connection between them? Back at the Bai family estate, he'd fought Yi Zichen and Yi Zichen to a standstill, and had tried to kill them several times. He had survived Patriarch Bai's self-destruction, a self-destruction at that level, and had even come to the Lightning Emperor's residence. This guy was like a ball of mystery. What are you trying to say? I'm going to share some more information with you. If you get the chance, I hope you can speak to your Emperor Star on my behalf. Transmitted by Haoyu. By Haoyu transmitted. I'll be nice and explain to you why Shao Ting took back his seat. In truth, someone ordered him to do so from behind the scenes. Order? Who could order him around? Did you see the white powder he sucked? Said Bai Haoyu. I secretly collected some of that powder and analyzed its composition. It contained illusion spirit fruit. Illusion spirit fruit. It could create an illusion that numbed the user's nerve. Tens of thousands of years ago, illusion spirit fruit was used to numb pain, but after using it, the user would become dependent on it. Furthermore, the environment in which it was grown was terrible. It required human blood to grow, so it was classified as a forbidden medicine. Since then, it's been a long time since anyone had seen one. News. During this time, he'd seen Shao Ting inhale the powder several times. Based on the way he'd inhaled it, it seemed as if he'd ingested some hallucinogenic substance. The demons began cultivating it 1,000 years ago and only succeeded 100 years ago. Shao Ting was one of their first users. My guess is that he wasn't the only one. I'm sure quite a few experts of the God and Yao race have consumed the powder as well. Bai Haoyu's messages never ceased, and Yang Jian's frown deepened. Illusion spirit fruit has a strong dependence. Once consumed, it'll go out of control. If you stop using it, you'll feel as if 10,000 ants are gnawing away at your bones. If the demons threatened him with the powder, do you think Shao Ting would listen? Where did you hear about this? Asked Yang Jian. I can't tell you. It's a secret I'm keeping. All you need to know is that Shao Ting is being controlled from the shadows. I want to use this opportunity to tell you that your cover-up for Shao Ting is completely useless. The ones who are investigating you are actually the devils. Bai Haoyu sighed. Bai Haoyu chuckled. Yang Jian's brows furrowed. If the demons really were investigating him, then perhaps he really might expose himself. Regardless of whether it was him or Yi Zichen, they'd put on a show for Shao Ting to see. Although they knew Shao Ting was working with the demons, they knew he wouldn't become their dog. He had his own judgment. But if the demons threatened him with the fruit, there was a high chance he'd become their dog. If that happened, the demons might discover some clues in their investigation. Didn't that mean that Shao Ting had called him over at a time like this to set up a trap? Was there an ambush in the palace? Yang Jian scanned the interior of the palace with his divine sense. Aside from Shao Ting, Uncle An, and a few others, there was no sign of anyone else. Just as Yang Jian was about to explore deeper, his body suddenly stiffened. Emissary Yang, are you interested in my palace? Suddenly, Shao Ting grabbed his divine sense. By now, he'd already absorbed all the white powder on the foil. His sunken eyes revealed a sinister gleam. Just now I sensed that emissary Yang and attendant Bai were communicating quite frequently. I wonder what they were talking about. Could you tell me a thing or two? You've been here for so long, yet you've never gotten to know me. It's really vexing. Chapter 15-14. The Upheaval Alliance. Dozens of cultivators with majestic auras stood in the void above the no-fly zone. When the city's guards sensed their auras, they didn't even dare breathe loudly. They simply pretended they hadn't seen anything and scurried off to patrol elsewhere. Just now, they'd sensed that every single one of them was a ruler-level expert. What's going on? The pedestrians on the streets glanced at the dozens of sovereigns hovering in the air. Quite a few raised eyebrows, and the surrounding peddlers packed up and left. For some reason, they felt like something was off about these people's sudden appearance. Furthermore, Heavenly God City hadn't been particularly peaceful lately, so the peddlers had been alerted in advance. I thought we weren't allowed to fly in the air? There. Shoo. Why aren't we allowed to fly? That's just for us commoners to see. Didn't you see the city guards go over just now? They didn't even dare let out a fart before scurrying away with their tails between their legs. From the looks of it, who do they think they're going to fight? It can't be the Lightning Emperor's estate, can it? Look where they're heading. 100 years ago, the Profound Pavilion clashed with the Lightning Emperor's estate. It seems they're supporting the Upheaval Alliance as well. The pedestrians stopped and chatted among themselves. Meanwhile, in the skies above the Upheaval Alliance, the Upheaval Alliance's rulers are all here. Some are out on missions and can't make it back in time. Xiao Yumei pointed at the 40 or so sovereigns waiting in formation and reported to Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen's original plan was to find them all. He didn't know why, but ever since Yang Jian suddenly disappeared from the group, he'd had a bad premonition. He'd called them over to prevent trouble from happening. If Yang Jian really was in danger, the Upheaval Alliance's rulers would immediately attack the Lightning Emperor's estate. Suddenly, a fierce wind howled through the air. Everyone looked over and saw the great sage on a cloud, somersaulting in their direction. "Why are you here?" "Son, was a little worried, so I came to take a look," said the great sage solemnly. "You got here pretty quickly," said Pu Jingwan. Son, can travel 10,000 miles with a single somersault, but I'm still a man like the wind." The great sage smirked and snorted. Yang Jian hasn't said anything in the group either. Have they done anything yet? Not yet. Yi Zichen glanced at the ruler-level expert. However, I've already deployed our men. As long as there's even the slightest sign of trouble, we'll immediately attack. With that, Yi Zichen turned to Pu Jingwan. "Remind the people from the Profound Pavilion that we're preparing to open fire on the Lightning Emperor's estate." He told them to be careful and not let Zhou Wu take advantage of any loopholes. "Alright, also tell them that it is very likely that the Devil race and the Demon race are going to make a move, so be careful. Leave it to me." Thunder Emperor Hall. Xiao Ting sat on his throne, his eyes twinkling with disdain. Judging from his expression, he seemed to be suffering from the aftereffects of consuming the illusion spirit fruits powder. As he spoke, he sniffled. However, his cold gaze caused the temperature in the palace to plummet. It was like he wasn't the Lightning Emperor anymore, but a primordial beast. "Ha, I'm just joking." Suddenly, Xiao Ting completely retracted his aura and laughed heartily. "I trust Special Envoy Yang quite a bit. What's more, he's already at loggerheads with Yi Zichen and the others. How could I possibly help him pass on a message? Could it be that they sent Special Envoy Yang here as a spy? Isn't that a little too high of a price? Accompanying the king was like accompanying a tiger." This saying was not false at all. Ordinary people simply couldn't figure out the temperament of these Juanshang. Just a moment ago, he was stifling to the point of making it hard for people to breathe, and the next second, he was smiling like a spring breeze. But from Xiao Ting's words, she could sense that there was more to them than met the eye. The Thunder Emperor is wise. Yang Jian, who had a grave expression, bowed deeply. The Thunder Emperor laughed loudly, but he suddenly stopped. However, I heard that Special Envoy Yang has a mobile phone that has recently become popular among the Protoss. I also sent someone to buy a few. This mobile phone is very magical. It can also transmit information like a communication jade slip. This emperor wants to see who Special Envoy Yang's contacts are in his phone. I wonder if Special Envoy Yang can show this emperor? Watch. Yang Jian's expression froze, and Bai Haoyu's expression darkened. Uncle An, who had been standing in the hall with his hands behind his back, suddenly straightened his back, and the aura he exuded was no weaker than that of a sovereign lord. At this moment, the palace doors were smashed open. Dozens of fully armed Dominator rank experts surrounded the palace, making it so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. What does the Emperor mean by this? As the former #1 war god of the Heavenly Court, Yang Jian, the current Special Envoy from the Outer Realm, Special Envoy Yang. Without boasting, Yang Jian asked himself what kind of storms he had not been through. The current situation looked extremely perilous, but it was still far from frightening him. Now wasn't the time to make a move. Unless absolutely necessary, Yang Jian didn't want to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Lightning Emperor's estate. Unintentionally, Shao Ting waved his hand at the sovereigns, then waved his sleeves and left his seat. He strode over to Yang Jian and Bai Haoyu. I just wanted to see Emissary Yang's phone. So long as you show it to me, these people will naturally have nothing to do with it. What's the use? You don't trust us, Emperor, said Bai Haoyu suddenly. Only then did the Lightning Emperor glance at Bai Haoyu, a hint of playfulness in his eyes. I also want to trust you, but the time is a little special. I can't afford to be the slightest bit careless. It's better to be safe than sorry. There's nothing I can do about it. I just don't know when you've become so close to Emissary Yang that you're even speaking up for him. You jest, Emperor. I have nothing to do with him. It's just that I know that once the heir is dead, I'm afraid I'll have to deal with him, said Bai Haoyu. Clever. That's a good excuse. Shao Ting smiled and nodded, then glanced at Yang Jian. Whether you die or not is up to Emissary Yang. If you give me your phone and let me see it, and prove that there's nothing wrong with you, not only will I not kill you, but I'll even kowtow to you. I sincerely ask for your understanding. Heh! Yang Jian inexplicably laughed. Kill me? Don't you think you're being a little too arrogant? Do you really think you can handle me with just these sovereigns in your palace, who haven't even become emperor yet? Or do you really think you can handle me? Chapter 15:15. With that, Yang Jian put his phone back into his pocket, then reached out and grabbed his lance. Instantly, his aura surged like a raging sea. The third eye between his brows also opened at this moment, and streams of black air swirled around his body. A god had descended? No. Based on Yang Jian's current appearance, he looked more like a god of death that had walked out of the abyss. Just by smelling his aura, they could sense a terrifying storm of blood. Boom! Before Shao Ting and the sovereigns could do anything else, an ear-piercing explosion rocked the air outside the palace. Not long after, the main hall's door was knocked open with a bang. A one-armed member of the Lightning Emperor's manor ran in, his face covered in blood. What's going on outside? Roared Shao Ting. Your Majesty, the Upheaval Alliance. It's the Upheaval Alliance. We don't know where they found 40 rulers, but they're already attacking us from the front door. As Shao Ting raged, Yang Jian and Bai Haoyu glanced at each other. They attacked Shao Ting almost simultaneously. Uncle An, who'd been standing by Shao Ting's side, used his physical body to shield them. Splat! Blood splattered everywhere. Their attacks hadn't succeeded, but Yang Jian and Bai Haoyu didn't waste any more time. They raised their weapons, smashed through the walls, and fled. Capture them! Furious roars reverberated throughout the Lightning Emperor's manor. Outside, the Shao family clansmen and retainers rushed forward to stop them. Inside, Shao Ting's face flashed a devious smile. He really is a spy sent here. Uncle An was gravely injured. Blood flowed from his nose and mouth, but Shao Ting didn't so much as glance at him. This old steward had worked hard for the Lightning Emperor's estate his entire life. Even before his death, he'd shielded him from danger. Take Uncle An and treat his wounds. The rest of you, come with me to face the enemy. Boom, boom, boom. The ear-piercing explosions plunged all of Heavenly God City into panic. Everyone near the Lightning Emperor's manor and the Upheaval Alliance fled in panic. A few family clans on the other side of the city could sense the battle through the blazing sky. They're really fighting. I always knew that the Lightning Emperor's manor and the Upheaval Alliance would fight. I just don't know who'll win in the end. The Lightning Emperor's manor is an old family with deep roots. The Upheaval Alliance has only just been established. Although it's been rising to prominence recently, it's still far from comparable. Most of the onlookers agreed with this statement. The Lightning Emperor's residents had been able to stand tall among the god race only because of the Lightning Emperor's power, as well as his mysterious background. The Lightning Emperor's residents had been around for generations, so no one knew his true strength. In the eyes of many clans in Heavenly God City, even the God Emperor's estate might not be able to win against the Lightning Emperor's estate. God Emperor, the Shao family and the Upheaval Alliance are fighting. Within the God Emperor's estate, the Divine Arbiter entered and reported to Zhou Wu. Good hunting. Zhou Wu's eyes flashed with indifference. Shao Ting, don't be fooled by his pretense of loyalty. In reality, he's the ambitious one. He's long since coveted my position. As for the Upheaval Alliance, there's no need to explain their relationship with us. If the two of them fight, it'll only benefit me. But this is your capital, after all. If they're fighting so openly, it's clear they don't take you seriously at all. If we don't step in and stop them, the citizens of Heavenly God City might overthink things, said the Divine Arbiter. They're just fools. What good can their opinions do? Once I transcend, all worlds will be ants to me. You mean, you don't care? Let them fight. The fiercer they fight, the better. The best outcome is for both sides to suffer. That's the result I want to see. Zhou Wu's eyes blazed with viciousness. Right, is there any news of the Shui family's Emperor Star? Shui Tai hasn't shown his face since the day he opened his eyes, said the Divine Arbiter. It seems Shui Yang has hidden him away. Zhou Wu snorted. Keep investigating. I have to get my hands on his Emperor Star's celestial fate. Recently I've been thinking about transcending, but I've always been a little short. That must be the celestial fate. Your subordinate understands. The Divine Arbiter nodded, then left the hall. The God Emperor walked up to the window, looked out at the lightning and thunder, and snorted. Fight. Once I transcend, you'll all bow down to me. Children, attack. The great sage grabbed a handful of monkey fur and blew out a mouthful of immortal energy. The fur instantly transformed into a bunch of monkeys wielding staff. They tangled with the Shao family's Earth Supremes and Sky Supremes. Heaven plundering strike. Yi Zichen's Xianyuan sword flared with golden light. He gripped the hilt with both hands and swung it horizontally. The 300-meter-long sword radiance flattened half of the Shao family's outer sect to the ground with an unstoppable force. Yang Jian. As they fought, Yi Zichen and the great sage repeatedly called out his name. In truth, they hadn't sensed the slightest warning. They'd only attacked because they couldn't wait any longer. The torment in their hearts as they waited was indescribable. Furthermore, the Shao family's defenses were impregnable. Even if they received Yang Jian's signal, it would take them some time to break in. During this time, Yang Jian would be in extreme danger. They might as well just attack and catch Shao Ting and the others off guard. Even if their attack would expose Yang Jian as a spy, it didn't matter. Yang Jian's life was the most important thing to them. Have you found Yang Jian yet? Xiao Yumei asked, blinking her eyes as she kicked the Xiao family clansmen away. The Xiao family is strange. My divine sense can't even extend beyond 1,000 miles. I can't find Yang Jian at all. The great sage furrowed his brows. So we're just going to fight like headless chickens? Asked Xiao Yumei. Right now, there were only two factions in the vicinity, the Upheaval Alliance and the Xiao family. The Xiao family's territory was roughly the same size as the Upheaval Alliance's, perhaps even a bit larger. Based on the size of the Upheaval Alliance, if they kept fighting aimlessly, they might not even be able to cover the entire Xiao family in half a day. Furthermore, although they'd brought elites and rulers with them, the Xiao family still wasn't strong enough. If they kept fighting like this, they'd eventually run out of energy. Keep fighting. I'm going to contact Yang Jian. The great sage led his monkeys, while Xiao Yumei led the Upheaval Alliance's rulers. Like a sharp blade, they charged into the Xiao family's territory. Yi Zichen followed in the middle of the group and took out his phone. But at this moment, he saw that there were several new friend requests on his contact list. Shuiyang, Bian, Zhao Qianhe, Zhao Qianling, Xianji, Yirong. Why had all these great emperors suddenly sent him friend requests? Chapter 15-16. Yi, the great sage, who was leading the thousands of monkeys, suddenly turned around and roared. Behind Yi Zichen, a group of diviners hefted their weapons and stealthily approached. The Rui Jingu Bang descended, and the great sage landed by Yi Zichen's side. Don't get distracted. Only now did Yi Zichen notice the fallen diviner. He nodded and smiled. The great sage furrowed his brows. Yang Jian didn't reply. I'll contact him right away. With that, Yi Zichen didn't add anyone else as a friend. Instead, he found Yang Jian's chat window and sent a message. Location. He trusted Yang Jian would understand the meaning of this brief message. As expected, before long, Yang Jian replied. He didn't say anything unnecessary. He just sent him a map. The red dot on the map was the location marked by Yang Jian, which was also his current coordinate. As for the blue dot on the map, it was Yi Zichen's coordinates. The two of them were very close to each other, so if one were to convert the distance, then Yang Jian was right near them. Before Yi Zichen could relay the message, a massive explosion rocked the inner sect. Yang Jian, with his third eye open, and Bai Haoyu, wielding a silver sword, charged out of the inner sect. Monkey, hurry up and help me. I can't hold on much longer. The instant he saw the great sage, Yang Jian gnashed his teeth and shouted. He'd lost count of how many rulers and diviners he'd killed along the way. He'd fought so intensely that he had no time to recover his divine power. His face was pale, and his third eye was showing signs of disappearing. I son, am here. The great sage instantly landed in front of Yang Jian and tossed the Rui Jingu Bang high into the air. The golden cudgel immediately transformed into countless cudgel shadows, like a towering wall. The pursuers from the inner sect couldn't break through the afterimages. They were completely entangled. Pills. Yi Zichen arrived by Yang Jian's side and shoved a handful of pills into his hands. When he saw Bai Haoyu, he paused for a moment. When he saw Yang Jian nod at him, he gave him a few pills of his own. Many thanks. Bai Haoyu didn't say anything. He popped the medicinal pill into his mouth, then sat down cross-legged to recover his divine power. Along the way, his exhaustion was not any less than Yang Jian's. Both of them did not hold back at all. If either of them did not use their full strength, they would most likely die in the inner academy. Xiao Yumei led the rulers of the Upheaval Alliance to protect him, while the great sage blocked all of the Xiao family's inner courtyard experts. Yi Zi, you came just in time. I almost died inside. Yang Jian, who had recovered a bit of his divine power, took a deep breath. His pale face regained some color. This is... Yi Zichen glanced at Bai Haoyu. Bai Haoyu. Before Yang Jian could open the ring, Bai Haoyu said his own name. You might not have seen me before, but I'm the one who did this to you. It's you. The ribbon on Xiao Yumei's arm flew towards him, but Bai Haoyu easily tore it apart with a swing of his sword. Yang Jian extended his hand and frowned. Don't attack. We're all on the same side. Even the great sage was stunned. As the others watched in confusion, Yang Jian looked intently at the smiling Bai Haoyu, narrowed his eyes, and said, For now, at least. We'll talk about the details after we leave this place. All right. Yi Zichen was keenly aware that this wasn't the place to talk. The Xiao family clansmen were eyeing them hungrily, and the great sage couldn't possibly hold them off forever. Since Yang Jian said Bai Haoyu could be trusted, Yi Zichen believed him. Retreat! Yi Zichen roared, and the Upheaval Alliance's experts broke through the encirclement. The great sage, who'd stayed behind, gnashed his teeth, grabbed the Rui Jingu Bang, and shoved it outward. A sky full of golden rods slammed into the faces of the inner sect experts. Breaking through the encirclement was relatively easy. Most of the outer sect experts were diviners, and there were only a few rulers. It was practically impossible to stop them. What on earth is Zhou Wu thinking? We're fighting the Xiao family to this extent, but he still hasn't shown up to take charge, said Yi Zichen with a mocking smile. That's exactly what he wants to see. The Lightning Emperor's estate has a much longer history than Zhou Wu's. In Zhou Wu's heart, the Lightning Emperor's Xiao family is also a thorn in his side. Fighting us is exactly what he wants, and it'd be best if we fight each other. That's what he wants to see. He's crazy. Although he's on bad terms with the Upheaval Alliance, they're still part of the God race. If the Yaoan demons invade, the Upheaval Alliance's forces will be no small matter. Yang Jian knit his brows. Yi Zichen thought back to his previous meetings with Zhou Wu. Although he wasn't completely sure what kind of person he was, he had a rough idea. His passion for transcendence surpassed everything else. Everything he did was for the sake of taking that final step. In his eyes, the position of God Emperor was nothing more than a stepping stone on his way to transcendence. Of course, he also had a great desire for power. If the Yaoan demons invaded, so be it. Even if 8 of the God race's 9 mountains fell, he'd still be the God Emperor. Don't count on him. In the end, Yi Zichen decided not to discuss Zhou Wu any further. He simply snorted and laughed, then frowned at Yang Jian. What exactly did you want to tell me in the group chat? After spying on the Xiao family, I've come to the conclusion that the Xiao family is indeed colluding with outsiders, and they're extremely close. In the near future, they'll be preparing to attack the God race. The demons will be led by the Demon Emperor, and the Nine Li, the Frigid North, and the Yao race will all be participating, said Yang Jian. That's sudden. Shui Yang, Chao Feng, Baian, and the Fox Empress, Su Qinyan, had all been gathering information on the demons and Yao's movements. However, none of the great emperors had any warning that the demons and Yao would be making such a large-scale move. But just now you said they were preparing to attack. That means we still have time to prepare. The worst thing about war was being caught off guard. However, if they could prepare ahead of time, even if the Yao and demons joined forces, they still had a chance of winning. Aside from that, I've also received other information. As he spoke, he looked over at Bai Haoyu. He was about to tell him about the shocking information Bai Haoyu had given him earlier in the hall. However, before he could speak, the sky was suddenly enveloped by a black mist. Not a speck of light remained. Chapter 15-17. Black mist blotted out the sun. A heavy, oppressive aura emanated from the black mist. The citizens of Heavenly God's city couldn't help but shiver, and their skin tingled with pain. Strangest of all, within the black mist, one could almost see a pair of blood-red eyes. The eyes hovered in midair, like the eyes of an unsentient, bloodthirsty beast. Just by looking at them, one could sense a thick, bloody aura emanating from them. Xiao Ting was the most dazzling within the black mist. He wielded the Lightning Emperor's scepter, and silver-white lightning serpents coiled around him. He was the only light in this pitch-black world. Whether it was the citizens of the city or Yi Zichen and the others, they couldn't help but look at him. Lightning Emperor, you finally can't hide any longer. What are you referring to, Alliance Head Yi? Xiao Ting took to the air, and thunder rumbled in every direction. You've brought people to attack the Lightning Emperor's estate's inner sect. If I don't show up, where will I put my face? You know that's not what I'm talking about, snorted Yi Zichen. Be careful of your loose lips, snorted Xiao Ting. Yi Zi, what should we do now? Should we fight our way out or should we kill him? The great sage's transmission rang out in Yi Zichen's sea of consciousness. Yi Zichen narrowed his eyes and glanced at the Upheaval Alliance's headquarters. Ignore him. Kill your way out. When the Upheaval Alliance experts heard this, they tried to break out of the encirclement, but the Lightning Emperor didn't stop them in the slightest. Do you think you'll be safe once you leave the Xiao family estate? If you can attack the Lightning Emperor's estate, can I lead my people to attack the Upheaval Alliance? Go ahead and try. Yi Zichen smiled coldly, then continued to break out of the encirclement. Strangely, Xiao Ting still didn't stop them. He allowed the Upheaval Alliance to slaughter the Xiao family's outer sect clansmen. He could only watch helplessly as his clansmen coughed up blood and dyed the outer sect red. The Xiao family's outer sect clansmen had been slaughtered to the point of fear. They cowered and didn't dare rashly advance. Inwardly, they were confused as to why the Emperor still hadn't done anything. The elders of the inner sect just stood there with folded arms. They showed no signs of trying to stop them. Little did they know, it wasn't that they didn't want to move, it was that Xiao Ting had restrained them. This Emperor will ask you one last time. Have you made a decision? Xiao Ting's question echoed through the elders' minds at the same time. Their expressions flickered, because Xiao Ting's question just now left them in disbelief. Some of these elders had come from outside because of the Xiao family's reputation. After serving the Xiao family for so long, they practically treated the Xiao family as their own family. Every generation had been loyal to the Thunder Emperor's manor. Some of them were members of the Xiao family, either direct or collateral. Regardless of their background, they were fighting for the Thunder Emperor's estate and the future of the god race. Just now, the current Lightning Emperor, Xiao Ting, had told them that he was now a member of the Yao and Demons Alliance. He wanted to overthrow the god dynasty, and he asked if they wanted to join him. Betraying the god race. These elders didn't even dare to think about it. They were born in the god race and had fought for the god race for generations. But now they were being asked to betray the demon race and the demon race, who had been fighting with them for tens of thousands of years. The Lightning Emperor's manor had been loyal for generations, and they had always taken it upon themselves to protect the god race. By doing this, Xiao Ting was basically trying to drag the Lightning Emperor's estate into an abyss of eternal damnation. Emperor! Humph, I know what you want to say. The winner takes all. History will always be written by the victors. Now, do you think I'm committing treason? But if the god race is destroyed, then I, Xiao Ting, will be the savior of the god race. Xiao Ting's gaze was fierce, his eyes filled with undisguisable madness. The Lightning Emperor's manor has been a vassal for far too long. I want to experience what it's like to be the God Emperor. Besides, the era is about to end. Do you really think Zhou Wu can lead the god race to transcendence? He can't. But in my alliance there's a master who can transcend. Xiao Ting, you're messing around. The Lightning Emperor's manor has been loyal for generations. I can't just watch as you lead the Lightning Emperor's manor to destruction. The one who spoke was the Xiao family's third elder. He was also one of the Lightning Emperor's manor's older generation. In terms of seniority, he was Xiao Ting's uncle. Then don't watch. Rumble. Suddenly, a lightning dragon several meters thick descended from the sky and completely swallowed the clan elder. The other elders kept quiet out of fear. After dealing with the elder, Xiao Ting's eyes didn't waver in the slightest. It's your choice. We solemnly obey the Emperor's decree. We are at your disposal. In the face of life and death, loyalty was insignificant. Very few people were willing to die for loyalty. That's why, throughout history, those who were loyal would be eulogized by future generations. Especially these cultivators. The longer they lived, the more they wanted to live. Their former hot-bloodedness had long since been worn away by the passage of time. All they wanted now was to survive. As for whether or not they'd betray the god race, whether or not their future would be beyond redemption, that wasn't something they should be thinking about. Their only choice was to agree. If they refused, it was death. Very good. You really haven't disappointed me, Xiao Ting transmitted through divine sense. Xiao Ting's divine sense transmission rang out in the elders' seas of consciousness. They smiled bitterly and nodded fearfully. Xiao Ting really isn't stopping us. They were about to leave the Xiao family's territory. The outer sect members had long since been scared witless and didn't dare approach. However, Xiao Ting still stood in the sky, unmoving. You all noticed just now, right? Xiao Ting killed one of the family's higher-up. Xiao Yan, do you know who he killed? Asked the great sage. That's my third grandfather. Xiao Yan gnashed his teeth. The onlookers froze. Didn't that mean Xiao Yan's third grandfather was Xiao Ting's third uncle? He'd killed someone just like that. Weren't they family? It looks to me like Xiao Ting's really gone crazy, said Xiao Yumei, biting her lip. It wasn't just them. The Xiao family's outer sect members noticed as well. They stared at the sky in terror. They couldn't understand why Xiao Ting would kill that elder. But then, there was something else that made them feel even more despair. What are you doing? Why aren't you stopping them? Emperor, these people. Xiao Ting didn't even give them a chance to speak. He coldly interrupted them. Are you afraid? The Xiao family doesn't need weaklings like you. Boom, boom, boom. Countless bolts of lightning descended from the sky. At first, Yi Zichen and the others thought they were coming for them, but to their surprise, the lightning landed on the outer sect members instead. Even as an enemy, Yi Zichen couldn't bear to watch. They watched helplessly as the Xiao family's outer sect clansmen, from the gray-haired ones to the starving ones, were struck to death by the heavenly lightning. Not a single one survived. Chapter 15:18. The Xiao family and the Upheaval Alliance were, without a doubt, enemies. For the sake of their own victory, they slaughtered the enemy's soldiers. That was understandable. If you didn't kill them, they'd reach for your neck with their butcher knives. This was all because of the soldiers who'd fought, but the women and children who were crying piteously for food. They were innocent. Before attacking the Xiao family, Yi Zichen repeatedly warned the outsider rulers not to kill the women and children. Even they, the attackers, knew this. Why would Xiao Ting do such a thing? Before the lightning struck countless children, they had no idea what was going on. Countless mothers used their arms to protect their children before they died. When the heavenly lightning struck, their eyes were filled with unconcealable despair, as well as deep hatred. Countless loyal Xiao family clansmen watched their wives and children die. His eyes were bloodshot, and he ignored the difference in their cultivation levels. His eyes were so red they looked like they were about to bleed. He raised his weapon and charged at Xiao Ting, only to be struck by a bolt of heavenly lightning. It was like a rain of blood had descended upon the Xiao family's outer sect. Countless corpses fell from the sky. Blood rained down, forming a river of blood. The air was thick with the stench of blood. It was as if everyone in Heavenly God City could smell it. The inner sect clansmen clenched their fists. The elders standing by Xiao Ting's side didn't dare look directly at what was happening. Yi Zichen watched everything in silence. It was like a ball of fire was burning in his chest. The flames burned his chest, and his anger made his body tremble violently. His skin was also burned red by the fire on his chest. He could no longer turn a blind eye. Even though everyone who died was a member of the Shao family and had nothing to do with him, he couldn't remain silent. Little did he know, one of the outsider rulers couldn't bear to watch any longer. With a wave of his hand, he created a barrier of divine power in front of the dying women and children. The other rulers followed suit. Yang Jian and the great sage glared viciously at Shao Ting, their eyes brimming with undisguisable malice. Shao Ting. Yi Zichen, who was about to leave the Shao family estate, suddenly took a step forward. His fury made his expression ferocious. Up in the sky, Shao Ting silently stopped, a cold smile in his eyes. What's going on? This emperor is killing my own underlings. Could it be that Alliance Master Yi is not going to let me? Could it be that the deaths of these people made Alliance Leader Yi feel pity for them? If that's the case, then you're being too kind. What the hell do you want? Yi Zichen gnashed his teeth and squeezed the words out. With a rumble, the Yao Ceiling Pagoda appeared in the Shao family grounds. Yi Zichen collected all the despairing women and children into the pagoda. No one tried to stop him. Not even the husbands and fathers of the women and children who hadn't been killed by the heavenly lightning showed the slightest reluctance. In fact, they even felt gratitude towards Yi Zichen. What do you mean, Alliance Leader Yi? Lightning crackled around the Lightning Emperor's scepter. Shao Ting furrowed his brows and looked at the towering tower. He watched as it sucked in his clansmen, who were like slaughtered chickens to him. He was displeased. These are all members of my Shao family. Alliance Leader Yi, you initiated a battle at the Lightning Emperor's estate and left it in ruins. I didn't even attack your subordinate. All I did was kill a few cripples to vent my anger. Does Alliance Leader Yi really want to interfere? Don't you think you're stretching your hands a bit too far? When the time comes, I'll report this to the God Emperor. Alliance Leader Yi, what should you do? How laughable. Shao Ting's words made Yi Zichen laugh despite himself. Things had already reached this point, yet he still addressed Zhou Wu as the God Emperor? When he mentioned the God Emperor, he even turned to the God Emperor's estate and cupped his hands. He really was an experienced actor. His acting skills were ingrained in his bones. Do you still care about Zhou Wu? Alliance Leader Yi, what are you saying? The God Emperor is the leader of the 9 mountains of the God realm. You and I live beneath Heavenly God City's divine capital. We're the God Emperor's benefactors. Although I'm the Lightning Emperor, how could I possibly not care about the God Emperor? The Lightning Emperor stood majestically in the sky, his entire body radiating a majestic aura of righteousness. Well said. Suddenly, the crisp sound of applause echoed through the sky. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound and saw a black-robed woman emerge from the black mist. She seemed to be moving slowly, but in the blink of an eye, she'd crossed the distance of tens of thousands of meters and arrived before Shao Ting. Everyone who stood in the air, including the cultivators from the other powers who were paying attention to this place, without exception, could tell that this newcomer was an expert from the Devil Clan. Yi Zichen was even more familiar with this figure. The Holy Maiden of the Ninely. Whether it was the Upheaval Alliance, the Shao family, or the various factions outside, they were all focused on the Holy Maiden. To everyone's astonishment, the instant Shao Ting saw the Holy Maiden, he laid the scepter flat on the ground, then prostrated himself before her like a dog. He lowered his head and kissed her feet. After that, he raised his head with incomparable sincerity and raised his hands above his head. Holy Maiden! In the blink of an eye, practically all of Heavenly God City fell silent. The head of the Shao family, who was in charge of Tribulation Lightning, was second only to the God Emperor, the Lightning Emperor. Now, he was kneeling before a demon like a tame dog. The Shao family's inner sect members and elders hung their heads in shame. To them, this was a disgrace. Good boy. The Holy Maiden patted Shao Ting's head lovingly, as if he were a puppy. At the same time, she took out a package wrapped in tinfoil and handed it to him. This is your reward. Thank you, Holy Maiden. Xiao Ting knelt in the sky as if he'd just received a precious treasure. He carefully accepted the package. All right, you're the Lightning Emperor after all. I have to give you some face. Don't kneel on the ground. Get up. At the Holy Maiden's signal, he rose to his feet. What you said just now was, Holy Maiden, don't overthink it. I was just being polite. Who does Zhou Wu think he is? In my eyes, you're the one I should be loyal to, said the Lightning Emperor with an apologetic smile. Is that so? The Holy Maiden glanced around casually. When they sensed her gaze and heard Xiao Ting's words, it wasn't just the Xiao family. Even the vassal clans of Heavenly God City and the other factions felt their faces burn. The Lightning Emperor had betrayed the God race and become someone else's dog. Chapter 15:19. The transmission in Yi Zichen's Sea of Consciousness startled him. Regardless of what Xiao Ting's subordinates were like, their cultivation was already at the peak of the three realms. Even the God, Yao, and Demon Emperors found it difficult to control them. Furthermore, given Xiao Ting's cultivation, there was no way he didn't possess a divine artifact. How could the demon's Holy Maiden possibly control him? If word got out, they'd definitely become the butt of jokes. Are you joking? He wasn't controlled through his spiritual sea of consciousness, it was. Before long, Bai Haoyu's voice rang out. It's a phantasm spirit fruit. What's that? In response to Yi Zichen's questions, Bai Haoyu explained the fruit's effects to him. After learning of the fruit's effects, an idea popped into Yi Zichen's head. Drugs. Phantasm spirit fruits were similar to drugs in the modern realm. Long-term use would make the user addicted and destroy their willpower. Yi Zichen hadn't expected the upper three realms to have something like this, much less something so useful to someone at Xiao Ting's cultivation. If she was threatening him with something like this, Yi Zichen could understand Xiao Ting's actions. For the sake of the phantasm spirit fruit, he had no choice but to do this. The mighty Lightning Emperor had been tortured by a mirage spirit fruit into becoming someone else's dog. Xiao Ting's actions served as a warning. There were some things you could never touch in this lifetime. Your Excellency, Holy Maiden, why are you here all of a sudden? Leave Heavenly God City to me. Soon, I'll be able to open the Demon Gate and bring the Jili soldiers into the heart of the God Realm. Xiao Ting smiled apologetically and lowered his head, then stood behind the Holy Maiden. You can't wait any longer, can you? The people behind me are willing to sacrifice themselves for the sake of opening the Demon Gate. So long as you say the word, I can kill them on the spot. When the Xiao family's inner sect members heard this, their hearts trembled. They knew ahead of time that Xiao Ting was working with the demons. Just like the elders, they'd been forced to make a decision because of Xiao Ting's threat. Those who were still alive were the ones who'd decided to betray the God Realm. As for those who'd refused, they were all dead. As a result, when Xiao Ting slaughtered the outer sect clansmen, they simply clenched their fists. None of them said a word to stop him. But now, Xiao Ting said he'd use their blood to open the Demon Gate. The experts of the inner sect panicked. Suddenly, they envied the women and children Yi Zichen had taken into the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Forget it, said the Holy Maiden. Saintess. Fear flashed through Xiao Ting's eyes. Do you think I've delayed the Jili's invasion? I can. I already understand your loyalty. Forget about the demon race's gate. The Holy Maiden shook her head. Those old fellows in the clan made their own decisions without my approval. I dealt with them before I returned to the clan. The Jili tribe is not interested in participating in this battle. If they want to, let them play by themselves. Then I'm here to take you back to the Jili tribe. I know that you definitely can't stay in the God race. The Jili tribe is also the only place for you to stay. With an indifferent smile, the holy lady of the Jili tribe curled her finger at the blood on the ground. The river of blood converged in the sky, merging into a massive, blood-colored gate. Go in. Behind the gate is the Jili tribe. Before coming here, I've already set aside enough space for your people to live in. Xiao Ting didn't doubt her words. He turned and glared threateningly at the inner sect clansmen and elders. Clansmen rushed through the gate. In just a few breaths of time, the Shao family estate was completely empty. The only ones left outside were the outer sect clansmen Shao Ting had already abandoned, as well as a few members of the Upheaval Alliance. After Shao Ting entered, the Holy Maiden smiled and glanced at Yi Zichen. The Jiuli tribe will not participate in this invasion. All the favors I owed you before are written off. I wish you good luck. As the Holy Maiden stepped through the gate, which was made of blood, collapsed with a loud rumble. Blood splashed onto the ground once more. At that moment, a ripple appeared in the sky. God Emperor Zhou Wu, the emperor of the God race, had finally arrived. All he saw was the ruins of the Shao family estate, and the ground covered in blood. The great sage and Yang Jian's expressions instantly froze. They looked at Zhou Wu warily, as did the other rulers of the Upheaval Alliance. However, Zhou Wu didn't show the slightest hint of hostility. After checking out the Shao family situation, he smiled and asked, "Alliance Head Yi, may I ask?" "Alliance Head Yi, may I ask?" "You're too late. The Shao family left the God race long ago and headed for the demon's Jiuli tribe," said Yi Zichen. "They went to the Jiuli?" Zhou Wu furrowed his brows. "You don't know, do you?" Yi Zichen sneered. "Shao Ting colluded with the demons and betrayed the God race. Right now, the demons and Yao are plotting, no. They might already be attacking the God race. As the exalted emperor of the God race, do you really not know?" "What?" From Zhou Wu's expression, he didn't seem to be faking it. He really didn't know. As soon as he finished speaking, he glanced at the Divine Arbiter, who immediately left his side. As she left, they heard the sound of the wind whistling through the air. The newcomers were none other than the profound pavilion's Xianji and several of her divine generals. When she saw the desolate state of the Shao family, Xianji knit her brows. "Auntie, the great emperors sent you friend requests, but why didn't you accept them?" Xianji scolded Yi Zichen right to his face. "The Shao family? They went to the Jiuli." Then he recalled the friend requests on his phone. At the time, he'd been in too much of a hurry to save Yang Jian and was afraid of being delayed by external factors, so he hadn't accepted their friend requests. But now that Xianji had come looking for him, he had no choice but to ask, "What do you want from me? So many great emperors sent me friend requests all of a sudden. I'm a bit flustered. The demons and Yao have made their move. The Nine-Tailed Fox clan has suffered heavy losses. The Dragon Race, Vermilion Bird clan, and the other Sacred Beast clans have already gone to reinforce them." This. Yi Zichen instinctively glanced at Yang Jian. Didn't he say they were preparing to attack? How did things suddenly turn out like this? Zhou Wu's eyes flashed with astonishment. "Xianji, what did you just say?" "I said, the Yao and demons have joined forces to attack the God race. The Yao race's southern kingdom has already reached the river Styx. Your position as God Emperor will soon be in jeopardy."